Chapter 961. It had shrunk by 9/10. When the silver arrived, the two commanders were worried sick. The soldiers all knew that the emperor had given them 100,000 taels of silver as a reward. But with this amount of silver, how much would each person get after dividing it among the 200,000 soldiers? It was better not to divide this amount of money. But if they did not divide it, it would affect the morale of the soldiers. What should they do? When they heard that the silver had already arrived, many generals and soldiers who had made outstanding contributions revealed looks of eagerness. Helpless, the two commanders could only take out 10,000 taels of silver to reward those who had made outstanding contributions. However, many more people did not receive a single tael of silver. This caused many generals and soldiers to begin to complain, and the morale of the army began to fluctuate because of this. It was also at this time that Yeshin's counterattack arrived. First, outside disorderly Well City in the Hetao region, 200,000 cavalry suddenly appeared. The momentum was so great that when the news reached the ears of Yang Hong, he had a face of disbelief. How can this be? Yeshan only has so many soldiers. How can there be so many enemies appearing all of a sudden? This is definitely not possible. The roar was still ringing out in the tent when the scout general who had made the report was already half kneeling on the ground. Commander, it's not only the Walla cavalry that's coming, but also the cavalry of the Ili tribe, present-day Turpan. We've already merged with them. Right now, their vanguard is about to make contact with our vanguard. Commander, please make a decision quickly. When he heard that Ili division had also sent out their troops, Yang Hong fell back into his chair with a putong sound. The situation was completely out of his expectations. Originally, he had many soldiers and generals. But now, everything had turned around. He had become the one at a disadvantage. In addition, when they were dividing the silver, many of the soldiers were still dissatisfied. With such morale, how could they fight against the enemy? Retreat to Helan Mountain and wait for reinforcements at Ningxia Garrison. Yang Hong knew that time did not wait for anyone. He quickly gave the order. Retreating without meeting the enemy was because they did not have a proper plan. This caused the formation of the 200,000 Ming army to be messed up. Using this opportunity, the Walla and Ili division launched a frenzied attack. The Walla army that was surrounded in disorderly Well City also took the opportunity to kill their way out. Under the pincer attack, the Baiming army was defeated. More than 10,000 men died, 40,000 were captured, and many escaped. Even the 100 red coat cannons were lost. Only 10,000 men from the firearm unit retreated. When Yang Hong brought his army back to Ningxia Garrison, the 200,000 men, only. This tragic situation made Yang Hong feel like vomiting blood. But the situation made him bite the bullet and ask for reinforcements from Baiming. Yang Hong in Hetao land was defeated. Yeshan was busy cleaning up the battlefield. While catching the deserters and settling the prisoners, he also ordered General Kun Sa to lead 30,000 men towards Lang Mountain. He wanted to go through Lang Mountain and Yin Mountain to break the siege of Shajing City. But his real purpose was to attack the Baiming Xian Fu army there. After surrounding Shajing City for nearly 2 months, Shi Wanshan, who saw that the enemy had run out of food and was about to take down the city, suddenly received an urgent report from a scout. They had encountered too many defeated soldiers in front. They all said that Yang Hong was defeated. Now, Ili division's cavalry was heading towards the Shajing City. Arriving in front of the map, Shi Wanshan quickly determined that they would become the next target of Walla and Ili division's allied forces. Their military strength was not far below the enemy. Shi Wanshan had no choice but to give up on Shajing City that was about to be in his hands. He even gave up on Jingzhou City that he had just taken down and retreated to Sanbuchuan behind him. Shi Wanshan was very clear that Jingzhou City was a lone city. Once the army retreated there, if the reinforcements did not arrive in time, just the 200,000 men army's food and drink would be enough to crush the city. Therefore, when making this decision, even though they knew that they would be punished for abandoning the city, no matter if it was Deputy Commander Ancient River, Ning Wenfeng, or eunuch Deng Chang, none of them had any doubts. More and more Datong Prefecture soldiers retreated from the battlefield and took the route of Jingzhou City. The appearance of these 50,000 people caused Shi Wanshan's army's morale to be even more lax. Some of the soldiers who did not know the truth actually followed these deserters, causing chaos to appear in the Xian Prefecture soldiers who were affected. Under the urgent military situation, Shi Wanshan did not have time to make any more arrangements. He could only watch as chaos appeared in the army and retreated to Sanbuchuan City behind him. The enemy chased too hastily. Sanbuchuan City was not big. Even if the 4 gates were wide open, they would not be able to let in 200,000 men army in a short period of time. Many soldiers saw Kun Sa and his 30,000 steel cavalry chasing behind them. They had no choice but to give up on entering the city and head northeast. Their target was very clear. It was the largest city in the grassland, Shicheng. Many of them had heard of it before. It was a paradise for the Han people. As long as they went there, they could earn a lot of money and protect their own safety. 50,000 Datong deserters and 10,000 Xian Manor deserters who were affected, a total of 60,000 people were madly marching toward the first city. With such a huge commotion, the scouting troop naturally reported the news to Yang Qindong at the first possible moment and reported it to him. 60,000 young and able-bodied men. This is good stuff. Take them all. It would be a waste not to take advantage of a free opportunity. Yang Qindong would never give up such an opportunity. He ordered the logistics division to open a shelter between Mount Saihan and Tulu City. At the same time, he ordered the new army to go there and take charge of the security work. In addition to preventing these 60,000 deserters from causing trouble, there was another more important purpose. It was to prevent the cavalry from charging in. General Kun Sa chased all the way here. Other than picking up some weapons and supplies left behind by the Baiming soldiers on the way, he only captured 1,000 deserters. This made him very unhappy. When the army arrived at Sambulaquan, they saw that it was already heavily guarded. After seeing that the city tower was full of Baiming soldiers, Kun Sa, who did not bring any siege weapons, gave up on taking over the city. Instead, he continued to head north. He had his eyes on the 60,000 deserters. If he could intercept all of them and use them for his own purposes, it would be a great victory. Both sides had the same goal. The 5-star army and the Baiming forces met on the grassland at the same time. Hundreds of shelters had been built. The Baiming soldiers who escaped here could finally put down their worries. One by one, they lined up and entered to register in an orderly manner. They were ready to enter Shicheng and join the logistics division. Around them were more than 20,000 cavalry soldiers. It was the new army led by Tiger's man looking south from here. They could vaguely see the grassland cavalry army coming from afar. Kun Sa rode on his horse. Beside him were valiant warriors. Just as they were moving forward, the vanguard general and Qing appeared in front of him on their horses. General, there is a large number of 5-star army soldiers with the 5-star flag in front. 5-star army? The army of the Heavenly Khan. Another deputy general, Wuli Ji, said. General, before we came, General Yeshen repeatedly told us not to be enemies with the 5-star army. Look. What are you looking at? Kun Sa's face was full of disdain. As the generals of the Yili army, their territory was not connected to the 5-star army. What they knew and understood were only some rumors. Although this loyal duke of the Ming dynasty had many titles, such as the Heavenly Khan, the God of War, the Messenger of the Tingri Heaven, and so on, Kun Sa did not care about any of these. He only worshipped powerful strength. How many people do they have? A lot. Maybe not as many as we do, but it's not much different, Qing reported. If they don't have as many as we do, what is there to be afraid of? We chased these 60,000 Ming dynasty soldiers all the way here. We are about to get them, and now you want us to leave. How can there be such a thing in the world? How about this, Qing, you go and talk to them. We won't make things difficult for them. Don't the Han people have a saying that when we meet, we will share half? Since that's the case, let them give us 30,000 prisoners and we will withdraw. Negotiate? But what if they don't agree? Qing did not think that the other party would listen to him at this time. After all, no one would easily agree to take out the fat meat in their mouth. Don't agree? Then not only do we want these 60,000 people, we also want these 5-star army soldiers as captives. We also want to take them to the sure city behind him. I heard that it is the largest city in the grassland. I really want to see it, Kun Sa said heroically. In the past, the Tatar tribe was suppressed by the great Khan of Tuachuobuhua, so it was difficult for the Ili army to get their hands on this place. However, it was different now. Tuachuobuhua was dead, and the Tatar forces had fallen apart. They also had a relationship with Yeshen. Now, there was no one who could suppress them. What was there to be afraid of? Furthermore, people had always said that the Han people were a bunch of herbivores. They valued Confucianism, which was the principle of being a person. It was said that the high officials in the imperial court were all led by these people. On the other hand, the military officers had a lower status. What was so scary about such a race and power? Perhaps as soon as his cavalry charged, these people would be frightened and flee in all directions, just like those Ming soldiers outside disorderly Well City. Didn't they flee when they saw them coming? Kun Sa treated the 5-star army as the Ming army. This was his biggest mistake. After receiving the order, Qing turned around and returned to the front of the army. Then, he led 50 cavalrymen and went straight to the camp of the new army. 3 miles in front of the camp, they were surrounded by hundreds of cavalrymen of the reconnaissance group. The commander, Ding Shan, rode on a maroon horse and appeared in front of Qing at a steady pace, blocking the cavalrymen's path. Chapter 962. Go, call your Duke of Loyalty out. I have something to ask him. Qing rode on his horse and did not care about the cavalry that outnumbered him. Just like Kun Sa, he did not care about the great Ming dynasty's cavalry. When Ding Shan appeared, he originally wanted to ask the other party what was the matter and why they were here. He didn't think that she would be so arrogant, directly asking to see the 6th young master. She even had such an arrogant look on her face. His anger immediately flared up. Who was the 6th young master? In the hearts of the soldiers, he was like a god. In the eyes of some people, he was like a second parent. In the military camp, when you were angry or drunk, you could scold anyone. Even if you achieved outstanding military service, you could point at your superior and scold him for a while. At most, you could just apologize after sobering up and everyone would still be good brothers and comrades. However, no matter what, no one dared to speak ill of the 6th young master. This was because they would be ostracized and criticized by everyone else. In the best case, they would immediately be discharged from active service. In the worst case, they would be punished or even beheaded in public. With such a noble authority, the person who came dared to ask to see him and even acted as if it was only natural. There was no smile on Ding Shan's face. It was as if he did not understand. He asked again, "You want to see the Duke of Loyalty?" "That's right." Qing nodded, still with his nose in the air. "Okay, then I'll take you to see him." Ding Shan nodded. Although it was said that envoys were not killed when 2 armies fought, these people actually looked down on the 6th young master. This was equivalent to insulting all the soldiers of the 5-star army. This was a threshold that could not be crossed. When he heard that Ding Shan would take him to see the Duke of Loyalty, Qing immediately calmed down. He knew that as long as he showed his ruthless side, these Han cavalry would not dare to disobey. Well, the facts proved his conjecture. However, he did not know that his guess was not even half correct. Because in the next second, Ding Shan taught him how to be a person. He raised his right hand up high and then brought it down abruptly. "Tie them all up," he said. Even though some of the cavalrymen were prepared to resist, their resistance was futile in the face of the scouts who outnumbered them by several times. In Yang Xie's army, the strongest was naturally the Lengfeng, followed by the cavalry. The 1st Cavalry Division was even more powerful than the Cold Vanguard. In fact, when they weren't involved in sieges, they were even more powerful than the Cold Vanguard. However, there was another force that was also very strong, and that was the reconnaissance force. Being able to become a scout, especially a qualified cavalry scout, meant that they were 1 in 100. Whether it was their skills, horsemanship, or adaptability, they were all outstanding warriors. When such a group of people formed into a large scale, one could imagine how powerful such an army would be. Perhaps they were not as good as the world's #1 cavalry division, but they were definitely not too far off. Asking them to deal with the ordinary cavalry of Ili could only be described as using a butcher's knife to kill a chicken. Hikagen was the most pitiful. Just a moment ago, he was still arrogant and looked down on everyone. In the next moment, Ding Shan whipped him. The strong inertia coupled with the fact that he was not prepared made him fall off his horse. Following that was a series of punches and kicks. When he looked up again, his entire body was tied up with ropes and he was a captive. Not only him, but the 50 cavalrymen he brought with him were also captives. Some of the cavalrymen who resisted fiercely had a few knife wounds on their bodies. Blood dripped down mercilessly. There's no need to bandage them. That would be a waste of our resources. Send them back to the headquarters of the First Army. Ding Shan revealed a fierce gaze and gave the order. If it was any other time, he would not treat the enemy's messenger like this. After all, on the battlefield, there were always rules to follow. But today, Hikagen spoke so rudely that there was no need for him to be polite anymore. Even if he were to go to the headquarters, no one would be able to say anything wrong. In fact, they might even praise him instead. In the headquarters, Commander Tiger Mane and Deputy Commander Shibi were looking at the sand table in front of them. They were making plans for the aftermath of the emergency when they heard a soldier report that Commander Ding Shan of the reconnaissance team had arrived. Accompanying him were 50 Ili cavalry captives. Captives? I don't think we ordered a battle. Commander Tiger Mane was puzzled. Then he shook his head. This Ding Shan, did he kidnap the enemy's messenger? That's against the rules. Ha, Commander, perhaps there's something else. Let's talk about it when we meet them. Vice Commander Shibi also smiled. Based on his understanding of Ding Shan, this person was a smooth and slick character who rarely acted impulsively. But then again, an impulsive person would never become the commander of the reconnaissance team. Then let's call them in. Tiger Mane thought about it and decided to meet with Ding Shan first. Soon, Ding Shan entered the tent, carrying Hikagen, who was tied up tightly behind his back. As soon as he came in, he threw him to the ground, causing him to fall flat on his face. Then, he saluted Hu Mang and Shibi. Commander, Deputy Commander, this person wanted to negotiate with us, but he spoke rudely. I brought him here. What's going on? Tiger Mane's face darkened. After all, they were messengers. If there was no good reason to treat them like this, it would be unreasonable. It's like this. Ding Shan knew that he had to explain the situation clearly. Otherwise, he would be in the wrong. Therefore, he repeated what he had said to Keegan. As soon as Ding Shan finished speaking, a large foot suddenly kicked over, leaving a mark on Hikagen's face. Blood flowed out from the corner of his mouth. Perhaps it was because he used too much force, even his snot and saliva flowed out. Needless to say, it was Tiger Mane who kicked Hikagen. How dare he disrespect the young master? Just based on this, it would not be too much to kill him. Clang! Another kick was sent out. This time, it was Shibi who did it. After being used by Yang Qindong for so long, he had always wanted to repay him. But now, someone dared to look down on the 6th young master. Based on this, if he did not kick Hikagen, he would not be able to vent his anger. Hikagen, who had been brought into the tent, thought that he had found a place to seek justice. However, he did not expect to be kicked twice in a row. The kicks were not light either. He could feel the pain on his face, but because his mouth was gagged, he could not say anything. Deputy Commander, I don't think there's any need to hesitate. Let's just attack. Tiger Mane said as if he had not vented his anger after kicking Hikagen. I think so. And once we attack, we must injure them severely. This person should be of some use. Shibi looked at Hikagen, who was lying on the ground with a face full of grievances. His eyes revealed a terrifying smile. Hikagen was unlucky. He had only said one disrespectful sentence and he was ruthlessly beaten up. What made him even more confused was that when the three Han people looked at him, they all revealed expressions of interest. Because he didn't understand Chinese, he couldn't understand what they were thinking and what they were talking about. He could only feel that there was a deeper meaning in their gazes, and he couldn't help but feel his chrysanthemum tighten. Hikagen thought too much. No one was interested in him. They were only interested in his identity and had nothing to do with his body. Then, he was brought out of the tent and his nose was cut. In the 5-star Army's military rules, this was no different from a dead person. He thought that this was a punishment from the enemy and that he was destined to die. But once again, things went beyond Hikagen's expectations. He was let go just like that. Along with him were 50 cavalrymen. But 3 of them had already become corpses due to excessive bleeding. Their horses and sabers were returned to them. Then, they were let go just like that. As if to humiliate him, Hikagen was forced to walk around the new army camp so that every soldier could see his miserable state. Knowing that he was being humiliated, Hikagen's eyes were filled with tears but his gaze was resolute. This was because he was using this method to observe the 5-star Army's camp. Needless to say, he gained quite a lot. For example, he saw many soldiers eating and drinking together. Some even fell asleep in the open space of the camp. But in the face of all this, no one cared. Just you wait. With such lax military discipline, you will not be a match for our 30,000 cavalrymen. I will definitely take revenge for this humiliation. Hikagen thought hatefully in his heart. After a round of running around the barracks, it was already afternoon. He and Keegan were released. Once he was a mile away from the 5-star Army's reconnaissance team, Hikagen spurred his horse and rushed back to his own camp. There was only one thing left in his heart, revenge. In the Yili camp, Kun Sa was waiting for news. When he arrived, he saw Hikagen with blood on his face. After taking off his black scarf, he looked terrifying. When he saw him, Kun Sa immediately asked, "Who are you?" Just this one sentence made Hikagen cry. "General, look carefully. I am your vanguard, Hikagen." "Ah. You are Hikagen. How did you end up like this?" Kun Sa was puzzled. He really could not understand. Hikagen was fine when he went out. How did he come back with a face covered in blood? He could not even recognize him. At that moment, Hikagen told Kun Sa everything that had happened to him. Of course, he did not exaggerate. In short, the 5-star Army was too arrogant. They did not follow the rules at all and did not take their 30,000 cavalrymen seriously. Most importantly, their military discipline was very lax. Chapter 963. Lack of discipline. How do you know that? Kun Sa caught the main point. They wanted to humiliate me. After cutting off my nose, they walked around the camp. What they didn't know was that I saw their true colors. Oh, some of the soldiers were eating and drinking. Some of them were sleeping in broad daylight. They didn't look like an army that was good at war. "General, as long as you give me 5,000 cavalrymen, I will be able to break their morale with a single charge. I will be able to defeat them and make them flee in all directions." Hikagen said confidently. Good, good. Kun Sa laughed when he finally heard some useful information. He had never believed that the Han cavalry would be so powerful. In his eyes, The reason why they said that was because they did not want him to be the first one to gain merit. That was why they said that, to scare him. Now that Kagan saw it with his own eyes, he believed in his own judgment even more. The sky was getting dark, and it was just past the 15th day of the month. The moon was bright, and he had the idea of sneaking into the camp. "I order." Kun Sa's confident voice came from the tent. In the camp of the new army, Tiger's man and Shibi had come up with 2 battle plans. They gathered all the officers above the regimental level and announced their orders. Finally, there was a big battle to fight. All the officers were very excited. It had been 2 years since they eliminated Fan Yuhai and unified the Mongolian tribes in the north of the Gobi Desert. During this period of time, they had been constantly training their troops and were itching for a fight. Now that they finally had a chance to show off their skills, none of them wanted to give it up. Everyone took the initiative to be the main attacker, 30,000 cavalrymen. There's no need to fight. Everyone will have meat to eat. But I'll say this first. If anyone dares to retreat during a battle, they'll only be fit to be the reserve team the next time there's a mission. Tiger's man glanced at every officer in the meeting. There was a warning and reminder in his eyes. "Don't worry, Commander. This is our new army's chance to shine again. We won't let you down." "That's right. If our light cavalry regiment dropped the chain and let them escape, then you can take my head as the regiment commander. If I can't break through the enemy's battle formation in the first charge, I don't want my head anymore." All the officers spoke one by one, made their stand, and even made military orders. Tiger's mane nodded excitedly. "All right, I'll remember what you've said. Please remember that military law is merciless. If there's a problem, you'll have to be prepared to be punished by military law." Tiger's mane couldn't be blamed for being so careful. There hadn't been any major battles in the past 2 years, and many of the new soldiers in the army hadn't really seen blood. Although the training had been targeted, a real battlefield and a drill were 2 completely different things. Any underestimation of the enemy could cause irreparable losses. In order to eliminate the enemy, she and the military staff made a total of 2 plans. The first plan was that if the enemy attacked the camp at night, they would beat them at their own game. The second plan was that if the enemy didn't attack the camp, they would charge at dawn. That was when the enemy's defense was at its weakest. The night came as expected. The moon hung high in the sky, shining down on the grassland. It allowed Li to see the army clearly from afar. At the same time, their movements were perfectly captured by the scouts. "They're here, they're here. They're really moving out." After the scouts reported the news to the military, Tiger's man rubbed his hands in excitement. However, when he heard that the enemy only had 5,000 cavalry, he couldn't help but reveal a disappointed expression. "They only sent so few troops. It's not enough." "Ha, Commander, don't worry. They're obviously looking down on us. Since that's the case, we just need to advance to the second plan." She seemed to have understood the thoughts of his opponent. He must have let Keegan slip around during the day to show his weakness. Since that was the case, he would let them know the consequences of trusting his own eyes. "Yes, that's right." Tiger's man nodded heavily. He then looked at the messenger and said, "Order the direct troops to stay behind and attack the enemy. The Tatar division will flank the enemy from the left flank. The recruit division will flank the enemy from the right flank. The light cavalry division will circle the enemy from the rear. The heavy cavalry division, the scouts, and the military will charge at the enemy from the front in an hour. Once the 2 red signal flares are used, the entire army will attack." After the order was given, a few messengers moved out and spread the news that the second plan was to be carried out in advance. Immediately, the various divisions and regiments that were already prepared on the outskirts of the camp all went to their respective destinations. Only the direct troops were left behind to prepare for an ambush. Keegan's face was wrapped in a black cloth, covering his somewhat frightening face. He led 5,000 cavalry and charged straight at the enemy. When he was only a mile away from the camp of the new army, he still didn't see anyone appear to stop him. He only saw a few 5-star army soldiers that were in charge of night patrol running around. He couldn't help but let out a victorious smile. Everything was as he had expected. The new army was just for show. He didn't think that they would dare to attack at night. Since that was the case, he would kill to his heart's content and take revenge for what happened during the day. All of you, charge. It's time to kill the enemy. He raised his saber high and laughed heartily with Kagan. He followed the first echelon into the barracks of the new army. Then, he bent his body slightly and chopped at the curtain of a tent. He forcefully tore a hole nearly 10 feet wide in it. However, the expected scene of the enemy sleeping soundly or panicking didn't appear. With the help of the bonfire in the camp, they saw an empty tent. Not to mention a single person, there wasn't even a blanket to be seen. This was clearly an empty military tent. There was nothing inside. Just from this point alone, it was clear that no one had lived in it. One of the tents was empty. Kagan had a bad feeling about this, but he still continued to cut down a few more tents. Reality told him that there were no opponents in any of the tents, nor were there any items. At this moment, no matter how stupid he was, he knew that this was an empty tent. In other words, he had been tricked. Not good, this is the enemy's trap. Retreat. Seeing that his hopes were dashed, Kagan felt a chill run down his spine. Kagan shouted for the army to retreat. Even if they wanted to retreat now, it was clearly too late. Because right at this moment, countless cavalry suddenly appeared in the darkness around the large tent, each of them holding fiery bows. Under the loud shout of Commander Deng Yu, round after round of fire arrows flew through the air, landing in the midst of the 5,000 cavalry under the command of the Yili army. The flaming arrows were like meteors streaking across the sky, landing on the cavalrymen. One by one, the soldiers screamed, howled, fell off their horses, rolled on the ground, or galloped away aimlessly, knocking down their comrades one after another. Under the rain of fire arrows, the 5,000 cavalrymen's formation was thrown into chaos, drowning out Kagan's order to retreat. All units, charge! Deng Yu pulled out his saber after firing 3 arrows in a row. With a loud shout, he led the charge towards the surrounded cavalrymen. What followed was the sound of thousands of horses galloping from each camp. One side came prepared, while the other side was panicking. One side had high morale, while the other side had no will to fight. This was not a fair battle to begin with. After a few charges, the 5,000 cavalrymen of the Yili army were either dead or injured. The outcome was decided. In the main camp of the Yili army, one could vaguely see the flames of the new army camp a few miles away. Vice General Wu Liji smiled as he reported the good news to General Kun Sa. "General, it seems like Kagan has succeeded." "Ha, I've already said that the Han cavalrymen are nothing to be afraid of." Kun Sa laughed as if everything was within his expectations. "General, should we do something too? Why don't I bring a group of cavalrymen to support them? After all, there are more than 20,000 enemies. Even if it's to capture prisoners, we'll need help." Wu Liji took the opportunity to say. Obviously, he did not want to see Kagan take all the glory and steal all the credit. Kun Sa knew what he was thinking. With 5,000 cavalrymen, capturing several times the number of enemies would not be difficult. However, as a general, he had to learn to be fair. Otherwise, he would not be able to convince his subordinates. Kun Sa nodded and said, "All right, I'm a little worried about Kagan. How about this, I'll give you 5,000 cavalrymen. Go and help them." "Thank you, General." Wu Liji placed his right hand on his left chest and bowed. He then turned and strode away. Kun Sa, on the other hand, was humming a tune that only he could understand. He had a contented look on his face. At this time, he could not help but fantasize about his bright future after this meritorious deed. He thought about how Yeshen had said more than once that the 5-star army was not to be trifled with. However, this time, he had used his actions to give the other party a slap in the face. He wanted to see what else this person had to say this time. Ha! Kun Sa, who was overjoyed, said something that made people smile. If you don't fight, you won't know that our Ili army's cavalrymen are so powerful. Kun Sa's beautiful dream did not last long. After a quarter of an hour, Wu Liji suddenly returned from the tent. What's wrong? You haven't set off yet? Kun Sa was somewhat displeased that he had taken a quarter of an hour to prepare. With this kind of speed, he still wants to take the credit? General, something bad has happened. Something bad has happened. As soon as I led the army out, we ran into the main force of the 5-star army. Each of them was armed with a 3-meter-long saber and was covered in heavy armor. We were no match for them and lost. Wu Liji's face was filled with anxiety and guilt. Chapter 964. Huh? What did you say? Kun Sa slammed the wooden table in front of him, his face full of anger. What the hell is going on? How can there be the 5-star army in front of us? Weren't they heavily injured by General Qing? I don't know. Wu Liji shook his head. This time, he was not lying. He really did not know anything. As soon as the army came out, they bumped into the new army of heavy cavalry. Their equipment and combat power were not as good as the enemy's, so they were defeated in just one confrontation. How could they figure out what happened? Fortunately, Wu Liji did not need to explain anything. Scouts poured into the tent one by one. General, we found enemies on the left side of the army. General, we found enemies on the right side of the army. General, we found enemies on the right side of the army. What? What's going on? Where did so many enemies come from? Can anyone explain to me? With a face full of anger, Kun Sa slammed the wooden table in front of him several times. The wooden table was on the verge of collapse, as if it would collapse at any time. Following this shout, the tent was so silent that even a pin drop could be heard. Obviously, no one knew how to answer this question. This result was completely different from what they had expected, and it made them unable to think for a while. But the truth would answer everything. A flaming arrow suddenly shot into the main tent, and the flames rose. Soon, the tent was burned to a crisp, and the temperature in the main tent rose. Wu Liji also shouted, "Not good, the 5-star army is coming. General, quickly give the order to retreat." Retreat? Yes, retreat. After a moment of shock, Kun Sa gave the order to retreat. At this moment, he did not have time to think about why there were so many 5-star army in his camp. Now, he only thought about how to escape and save his life. 2 red signal flares were fired into the sky. Originally, only the 5-star army had entered the barracks. However, not long after, the 5-star army appeared from all directions. They held fire arrows and set fire to the barracks one after another, causing the horses to whine incessantly. Many of the cavalrymen in the Ili army couldn't even get on their horses. They were either shot to death, burned to death, killed, or captured. Fortunately, it was nighttime. Kun Sa and Wu Liji led 5,000 cavalrymen and charged in one direction. Eventually, they managed to force their way out. After losing 2,000 cavalrymen, they managed to break through the encirclement of the light cavalry regiment. The light cavalry regiment had always been known for their speed. Frontal clashes on the battlefield were not their forte. In the end, Commander Ma Xiangshan could only watch the enemy retreat and sigh loudly. The massacre in the barracks was still ongoing. The results of the new army's training in the past 2 years were proven on the battlefield. The soldiers raised their sabers, waved their arms, and demonstrated what they had learned in their daily training. They treated the living enemy cavalrymen in front of them as scarecrows on the training ground, repeatedly cutting them down. These new soldiers who had joined the battlefield in the past 2 years were already qualified in terms of organization, discipline, and individual qualities. Now, They only lacked actual combat experience to kill the enemy and see more blood. Tonight's battle made up for their shortcomings and gave them the opportunity to grow into qualified and even excellent soldiers. The battle lasted until noon the next day, and the Yili army was completely defeated. In this battle, they killed more than 6,000 enemies and captured more than 20,000 enemies. The new army's actual actions once again made a great contribution, and their reputation spread far and wide. Poor Kun Sa came with 30,000 soldiers, but when he escaped, he only had 3,000. Other than the war horses and the sabers in his hands, he left everything behind. It could be said that he was battered and exhausted. Reality gave them a solid slap in the face, and they finally realized that the Wallace Yeshen was right. The 5-star army was indeed not to be trifled with. Kun Sa led 3,000 cavalrymen and retreated like crazy. They retreated to Shajing City, which was 300 miles away. There, they met the Walla army, who had already occupied the city. Only then did they feel relieved. When they completely relaxed, Kun Sa's anger rose again. This time, although he was defeated by the 5-star army, he was defeated by the enemy's conspiracy. The two sides did not fight face to face, and this made him very unconvinced. Therefore, after a good night's rest, he went to see the Wara leader Yeshen in Shajing City and expressed his intention to join the 5-star army in World War II. Compared to 6 years ago, Yeshen had become a lot more mature, especially after Tuachuo Buhua was killed by him. The aura of a superior was even stronger. In the courtyard of the former Shajing City government office, Yeshen met with Kun Sa. When he heard that Kun Sa wanted to send troops to inflict heavy losses on the 5-star army and avenge more than 20,000 of his soldiers, he did not refuse. Instead, he asked politely, "How many cavalrymen does General Kun Sa have now?" 3,000, but they are all elites, Kun Sa answered without hesitation. Oh, only 3,000 cavalrymen? I thought General Kun Sa had 300,000 cavalrymen. After chuckling coldly, he suddenly roared, "I don't care what kind of status you had in the past. Right now, you are nothing more than a small general with 3,000 cavalry. Where did you get the confidence to speak to me like this? Men, throw him out of the courtyard." Yeshen's sudden change in attitude made Kun Sa's expression very ugly. He still wanted to struggle, but more than a dozen new soldiers rushed forward and lifted him up. They carried him out of the courtyard and threw him onto the street. It was also at this moment that Kun Sa remembered Yeshen's character. This was a man who only cared about benefits and benefits. For benefits and benefits, he would even kill his own brothers at any time. Coming into contact with such a person was like asking a tiger for its skin. After being thrown out of the courtyard, Kun Sa was helped up by the soldiers waiting outside the courtyard. He then left with an angry look on his face. He left Shajing City and went straight to the rear. He had already received news that Yili's army was coming from the direction of Yili City, which was his real home. Someone told Yeshen the news of Kun Sa's departure, but he was not moved. He had to admit that he was indeed afraid of Yang Qindong from the bottom of his heart. Unless it was necessary, he did not want to make an enemy of Yang Qindong. Kun Sa, with only 3,000 cavalrymen, wanted to ally with him. He would not do such a stupid thing. What he needed to think about now was how to drive Baiming's army out of the grasslands. For example, the nearby Sambulaquan would be his next target. Sambulaquan City. Shi Wanshan, the chief of the Xian Mansion, who had retreated in defeat, returned here with nearly 190,000 defeated soldiers. Originally, he wanted to reorganize here and then launch a counterattack to retake Jingzhou City and Shajing City. However, he did not expect the Datong army to be defeated so quickly. He was not ready yet, and Walla's main force was already in front of him. Not only did they take over Jingzhou City and Shajing City, which he had abandoned, but they also threatened the safety of Sambulaquan City. In other words, even if Shi Wanshan wanted to retreat now, he had to be prepared for an attack when he left Sambulaquan City. Shi Wanshan, who was originally ambitious, felt a little sad that the war had reached this stage. He hated the officials of the imperial court, who only knew how to pursue their own interests and did not care about the overall situation. He hated the incompetence of Datong's chief of the army, Yang Hong. If he did not have such a big appetite, he would not have surrounded Chaojing City and instead thought of a way to take it down. Then, he would have been able to resist the allied forces of Walla and Yili. This would have created an opportunity for him to take down Chaojing City and reach the rear of Walla. At that time, the opportunity for the decisive battle would have arrived. But now, the defeated army had become a fact. How difficult would it be to find the same opportunity as before? Shi Wanshan seemed to be somewhat dispirited. The expressions of the two deputy commanders beside him, Gu He and Ning Wenfeng, were not much better. However, the eunuch in charge, also known as the military supervisor eunuch, Deng Chang, said in his croaky voice, "Generals, the emperor has already sent someone to deliver an 800 li urgent message. He said that the court is currently sending reinforcements. This time, with Governor Shi Heng as the leader, they will assist us and send troops to the grasslands. Our current mission is to defend Sanbuji River. We have to be like a nail nailed into this place. If we dare to retreat, we will be punished according to military law." After saying this, Deng Chang could not help but let out a sigh. Although he didn't know much about military affairs, he knew how difficult it was for a lone city to defend until reinforcements arrived. In history, there might be people who relied on a city and defended it for half a year or even longer. But without exception, those who defended it were all big cities with enough provisions to last them for a long time. In contrast, Sambulakwin did not have such conditions. The city walls were low, only about 20 feet high. Scaling ladders could easily be placed on top of the city walls. The provisions in the city were not sufficient, and even the water supply was not enough to satisfy the needs of the army. Under such conditions, it would be a big problem for anyone to defend it. Report. While the four of them were still hesitating about what to do next, a scout suddenly came to report that 30,000 soldiers had defeated the 5-star army. The main general, Kun Sa, only managed to escape with 3,000 soldiers. When the news came out, Shi Wanshan and the other three generals' expressions became even more complicated. In contrast, the 5-star army had won a great battle, but they had just suffered a great defeat. This stark contrast made them even more depressed and anxious. In the silent room, the deputy chief, Ancient River, suddenly said, "The 5-star army has fully grown. Even if we can defeat the Walla and the Yili one day, how are we going to deal with the 5-star army? Who is their opponent?" Chapter 965. Speaking of which, Gu He could be considered a valiant general. Among the 200,000 soldiers of the Xian mansion, even Shi Wanshan was slightly inferior to him. Usually, he was the one who shouted the loudest, as if he didn't put the heroes of the world in his eyes. But now, he actually asked this question. This was enough to show that he was a little afraid. Ancient River's words made the originally quiet room seem even quieter. Shi Wanshan and Ning Wenfeng didn't say anything. They didn't know what to say or how to answer this question. Only Deng Chang, the eunuch, suddenly said after a moment of silence, "General Ancient, what do you mean? Could it be that you're afraid?" As a eunuch, he only had one person to back him up, and that was the emperor. Anyone who disobeyed him would become his enemy. It was only because they were on good terms that Deng Chang normally didn't dare to say such things. If it was anyone else who dared to say such things, Deng Chang probably would have already called for soldiers to arrest them. "I'm afraid." What a joke. On the battlefield, when have I not led the soldiers? I'm just talking about something we'll have to face sooner or later. Faced with Deng Chang's question, Ancient River naturally wouldn't back down. In the face of a great enemy, if there was any internal strife, the situation in the city would be even worse. As the commander, Shi Wanshan finally opened his mouth and said, all right. These are just private words. They can't be taken seriously. We should think about how to deal with the current situation and how to deal with the Walla cavalry. The emperor has already said that we can't lose Sanbulachuan. Otherwise, we'll be punished by military law. Since it's like this, if you don't want to die, quickly come up with a plan. It's not easy to defend. Without enough provisions, the morale of the army will fall into chaos as time goes on. Ning Wenfeng, who was famous for being a wise man, shook his head. We can have Talu think of a way to supply us with provisions. Also, this place isn't far from Datong Prefecture. We can think of something from there. Dang Cheng also suggested. After following Shi Wanshan for so long, he wasn't a complete novice when it came to military matters. He more or less had some common sense. Datong Prefecture. Hee. Hearing this, Ning Wenfeng shook his head. Right now, their main force has retreated to the Ningxia Guard. They must be scared out of their wits. It's impossible for them to support us. I fear that they don't even have the courage to open the city gates. As for Tulu City, we can order them, but once we leave, there aren't that many guards left there to begin with. It's already not bad for them to be able to defend the city. They will be able to hold on. Duke Zhongdan won't let anyone take Tulu and threaten the Han people. Shi Wanshan interjected with certainty when this topic was brought up. This was also what he was not worried about. Perhaps the emperor had also seen this point. Otherwise, he would not have ordered them to defend Sambulakwin to the death. Instead, he would have ordered them to retreat to Tulu City. Regardless of how great of a threat Yang Qindong was to all sides and how fast his power rose, there was one thing that was not wrong. He had taken care of the great Ming people, or rather, the Han people. This situation was seen by everyone. Since this was the case, with his temper, there was no reason for him to allow Tulu City to be attacked. On this point, even Shi Wanshan was full of admiration for him. When it came to Yang Qindong, Ancient River interjected, "Hey, do you guys think we can have someone send a letter to the Duke of Loyalty and ask them to transport supplies for us?" Others might be afraid of the Walla and Ili allied forces, but the 5-star army shouldn't be afraid. Is that okay? The 5-star army doesn't have many troops in Origin City. Do they have this kind of ability? Dang Cheng also heard the interest and asked. Don't think about it. It's impossible. Ning Wenfeng refuted. Afraid that the two would not believe him, he then explained, everyone is not stupid. We should be able to see the ambition of the Duke of Loyalty. In the future, there will be a day when we will become enemies. Since we are enemies, it would be good if they don't step on us when we are in dire straits. How can they support us? Besides, do we have money to pay them? If I remember correctly, the Emperor still owes the Duke of Loyalty 11 million taels of silver. As Ning Wenfeng spoke, the expressions of Shi Wanshan and the others constantly changed. Especially the eunuch Deng Cheng, his expression was very unsightly. After all, his master owed the other party money and was not firm in his words. He was only a small chess piece in his master's eyes. What else could he say? The four of them sat for an entire afternoon and still couldn't come up with a better idea. In the end, Shi Wanshan could only say, forget it. It's a blessing, not a curse. Let's just hand over the problem. Since the Emperor wants us to guard here, there are some things that can be solved with help. Otherwise, we can't blame anyone if we can't defend the city. By the way, I have to trouble eunuch Deng with this matter. You know the situation in the city. The army can only eat for 20 days at most. After 20 days, I'm afraid the city will collapse. This eunuch knows. I will go back and write a secret report to the Emperor. Deng Cheng said seriously. This was no longer a matter of whether or not he could complete the task. It was related to his own life. He couldn't help but take it seriously. First city, Yang Mansion. The new army had won another great battle, killing and capturing nearly 30,000 enemies. The news of victory was sent to Yang Qindong. He just glanced at it and put it aside. This was within his expectations. If the new army couldn't defeat the enemy, then it wouldn't be called the new army. Ili underestimated the enemy, so it was only a matter of time before they were defeated. He wasn't worried. What he needed to consider now was the changing situation in front of him and what he needed to do. For example, what kind of changes would happen to the situation on the battlefield? Yang Qindong was a person who liked to take 3 steps at a time. This time, the sudden appearance of Ili's cavalry was beyond his expectation. It was also not within his plan. However, since they had appeared, of course, he wouldn't be polite. That was why he ordered the new army to attack. Facts proved that they won this battle without any suspense. However, this didn't mean that there was no problem. On the contrary, what Ili would do next was a problem that he needed to consider. Only by estimating all the possibilities and making preparations could they ensure that the 5-star army would be able to face everything safely during the mission. All along, Yang Qindong had been doing this. Every battle under his command didn't seem to require much effort or danger. However, this was the result of his careful calculations and strategies. Otherwise, even if he had weapons that were a few hundred years ahead of this era, he wouldn't be able to achieve such great results in such a short time. Then the problem appeared. What would Ili do next? Would he choose to swallow this loss silently or send out a large number of troops for revenge? 4 years ago, he left Baiming's capital in the name of returning to his hometown to pay respects to his ancestors. He left to help the southern Ming Empire deal with the Yellow Bandits. Since then, he had started his own journey. The only difference was that the farmers earned grain, the merchants earned money, and the politicians earned reputation. What he earned was merely a country. To build a country, it wasn't as simple as fighting and killing. Wasn't there an old saying that went, "It's easy to conquer the world, but hard to defend the world"? How to manage these territories well and use them well was the time to show one's true ability. Fortunately, with the experience of the later generations and some of the goods in the warehouse, he was able to create a lot of value. With money, it was easy to do things, and the territory he conquered was stable. But after all, his foundation was too weak, so the local management couldn't keep up with the pace of his expansion. Just like now, he could command his troops and had the ability to conquer more territory, but how to defend it had become a big problem. For example, the territory in front of him wasn't small, and it was vast but sparsely populated. Once he defeated the enemy's main cavalry, it wouldn't be difficult to occupy it. Similarly, because the territory was vast but sparsely populated, the number of civilians needed was really difficult for him. In other words, he had the ability to defeat the enemy, but he didn't have the strength to occupy the enemy. Even so, now was the time to occupy Ili, which meant that it wasn't the time to fight the enemy. Sigh, I used a lot of effort to defeat the enemy, but I can't ask for any benefits. It's really not interesting. With a sigh, Yang Qindong called Beta Persei. He wanted to send a message to the Mabe army thousands of miles away and ask them to do something. Yang Qindong was calculating. He needed time to accumulate enough strength, such as excellent management personnel after occupying a piece of land, the people who needed to move in and out, the development of this area in the future, what kind of factory to build, what kind of sunshine to point to for the people, and so on. Like him, Baiming was also calculating. In the capital of Baiming, the ministers reached a consensus at the court meeting. Sanbu Lechuan must be defended. Only in this way could they give Governor Shiheng enough time to prepare for a big battle with Walla on the grassland and win the final victory. The consensus was reached, but the situation in Sanbu Lechuan was there. The city was not big, the city walls were not high, and the food and water stored inside were very limited. With such a medium-sized city, it was impossible to stop the combined forces of Walla and Nili Ali. Commander Shi is a general who can fight. The Battle of Xian Mansion and the Battle of Toulouse City have proven his ability. Now he has nearly 200,000 troops in his hands. As long as the provisions can keep up, there shouldn't be a problem to defend the city. At the court meeting, Minister of War Yi Ming stood up and expressed his opinion. Yi Ming's words attracted the silent support of many other ministers. But then Minister of Works Sherpu stood up. Minister E is right, but the key problem is how to guarantee the provision on time. Chapter 966. Yes. Where is Minister Jean? How are the preparations for General Shi's army of 200,000 going? Sitting on the golden dragon throne, Zhu Qiyu nodded. His gaze turned toward the Minister of Appointments. Jin Lian stood in the group of officials. Hearing Dai Zong call out his name, he immediately stepped forward with a board in his hand and said, "Your Majesty, the provisions have already been transported to the Xian Manor. According to what I know, a portion of the provisions will move with the army. A portion of the provisions need to be transported to the front lines once every 3 to 5 days. Based on this, most of the provisions should still be in the Xian Manor. Then send it over." Hearing that the provisions had already been prepared, Zhu Qiyu's face was filled with joy. However, after saying this, he realized that the entire hall had suddenly fallen silent. It was as if there was something wrong with what he had said. Fortunately, there were some officials who were good at understanding people's hearts. Minister of Justice Su Yozhen stepped forward and said, "Your Majesty, the difficulty right now is that the provisions can't be transported up. Presumably, the area around Sanbu Lushuan should be filled with Yeshin's cavalry. If we send them up now, it's no different from sending sheep into a tiger's den." Yes, yes. Zhu Qiyu's face turned bright red. Although he had already been the emperor for 6 years, he had never been on the battlefield. His understanding of war was only from what he read in books. After Su Yozhen's reminder, he knew that what he had just said was a bit too hasty. His face turned red. In order to eliminate the effects of what had just happened, he thought of a way to divert everyone's attention. He looked at Shi Heng in the group of generals and said, "Governor Shi, when will the newly gathered 200,000 soldiers be gathered and sent to the battlefield?" "Your Majesty." Shi Heng bowed and said, "The gathering time will take around 15 days. After all, 200,000 people is not a small number. As for when they will be able to reach the battlefield, if they rely on their legs, it will probably take another 1.5 months to reach Sanbu Lushuan. However, if I work hard, 2 months should be enough." 2 months? This answer caused the officials who were participating in the court meeting to whisper to each other and discuss spiritedly. If it really took 2 months, Sanbuchuan might really fall. If that was the case, the 200,000 soldiers in the city would be devoured. This would undoubtedly be a heavy blow to Baiming's military strength. On the dragon throne, Zhu Qiyu shook her head. "I'm afraid 2 months won't be enough. How about this, if anyone has any way to transport the provisions to Sanbu Lushuan, feel free to share it." This, the ministers couldn't help but shake their heads like rattledrums. To break through the formation of the Wala cavalry and transport so much grain into the city, there was only one word to describe it: difficult. After waiting for a long time, no one came forward to provide advice. This made Zhu Qiyu very angry. Normally, all of them would claim to be patriotic ministers and would love to dig out their hearts for him to see. Or perhaps he was more capable than Guan Zhong and Yu Yi. However, when faced with a difficult problem, all they did was shake their heads. How could Zhu Qiyu not be disappointed? After a while of discussion, the hall became quiet again. It was clear that no one had thought of a better idea. Seeing the reaction of the ministers and thinking about the fiery military situation ahead, Zhu Qiyu couldn't help but get angry. She slammed her hand on the dragon table and asked loudly, "My dear ministers, you are all the smartest and most capable people in the world. Don't tell me that even you don't have a better idea." These words made the old ministers blush. However, there were some thick-skinned ones whose faces didn't change. To them, what they learned was how to govern the world and how to govern the country with benevolence and righteousness. It wasn't some military book. It had to be said that this was the so-called Confucianism. It was just a theory within a theory. The more one read, the better one could write some good articles. This was also the use of it. They could pass the imperial examinations and obtain the qualifications to become an official. Then, they would slowly waste their time and accumulate experience. Finally, they would become the so-called minister who governed the country. With such people, it was no wonder that the common people lived in an abyss of suffering. The hall was still silent. Zhu Qiyu's expression became more and more unsightly. He once again felt a sense of isolation and helplessness. He once again understood what it meant to regret not having enough help when it was time to use it. In the moment of silence, a voice suddenly sounded. Dressed in a second-rank official's robe, Minister of Justice Su Yozhen stepped out of his office and said, "Your Majesty, actually, if you want to transport provisions to Sambuchuan City, it isn't that troublesome. As long as one person is willing to agree, this matter is simple." Someone stepped out. This already made Zhu Qiyu very happy. The person who stepped out even thought of a solution. Zhu Qiyu immediately asked, "Beloved Minister Su, do you have a good idea? Quickly say it." Among the officials, the Minister of Rights, Hu Shao, had been standing there with his eyes closed. When he saw Su Yozhen step out, his originally unconcerned expression instantly changed. His brows couldn't help but furrow together, but then slowly relax. Yang Qindong had already told him that Su Yozhen was also a person of the same path. However, in these past few years, the two didn't have much contact. Perhaps it was because they didn't feel at ease with each other. They only silently cooperated with each other on some matters. If they could cooperate, they would also silently support each other in private. Hu Shao naturally understood Su Yozhen a little. He was smart, discerning, able to see the situation clearly, and had smooth and slick methods. However, him stepping out at this time was still out of Hu Xiao's expectations. He had already guessed what this person wanted to say. However, was it really good to involve Yang Qindong in this matter? The opponent this time was the allied cavalry of the Walla cavalry and the Ili cavalry. Did the five-star army really have the strength to stop them? However, with Su Yozhen's personality, he rarely fought a battle that he wasn't confident in. Could it be that he had received Yang Qindong's secret order and wanted to take the initiative to participate in such a big event to share some benefits, or was it all his own idea? While Hu Shao was still guessing, Su Yozhen had already stepped out. He crossed his arms and said, "Your Majesty, if you want to resolve this situation, the only way is to ask the Duke of Loyalty." "There is no other way." The Duke of Loyalty? Zhu Qiyu, who was sitting on the dragon throne, originally had a face full of expectation. At this moment, his expression became somewhat ugly. It was unknown when it started, but in the court of Baiming, the words, Duke of Loyalty, had become a taboo. If it wasn't necessary, no one would mention it. Perhaps everyone knew that this person's influence was so great that it threatened the survival and development of Baiming. However, this person's influence had already reached a certain level. He was no longer someone that could be casually suppressed. Since there was no way to deal with him, it was better not to mention him. This could be considered as out of sight, out of mind. But now, Su Yozhen had broken this rule and took the initiative to mention him. An extremely clear expression of displeasure flashed across Dai Zong's face. The Duke of Loyalty? How could he have such an ability? Zhu Qiyu's voice carried a trace of dissatisfaction. Listen to the sound of gongs and drums. The ability of the officials to observe people's expressions was not small. Seeing that the emperor was a bit angry, the smartest thing to do was to immediately stop this topic. However, Su Yozhen had no way out now. Ever since Yang Qindong appeared in the capital of Baiming and saw him at night, Su Yozhen, who had been wavering, knew that he had already boarded Yang Xie's ship. It was likely that it would be impossible for him to get off. The only thing he could do was to think of a way to prevent this ship from sinking in the sea and find a way to sail further. After understanding this in his heart, he took the initiative to cooperate with Yang Xie. For example, when the Five-Star Army attacked North Korea, many of the officials in the court criticized the Five-Star Army for attacking a vassal state of the Ming dynasty. This was clearly a form of disrespect to the Ming dynasty. Not only did he not make a fuss with these people, he even privately found the Daizong emperor and said that North Korea was not part of the Ming dynasty. Even if it was taken away, there was no real loss. It would be better to use this opportunity to ask the 5-star army for some warhorses. After all, strength was the way of the king. As long as he had enough strength, he could take back what he lost sooner or later. It was Su Yozhen who came up with this idea. He originally wanted to reprimand the 5-star army and even the Daizong emperor who sent troops from Liaodong to support North Korea. He thought that compared to the vassal state being captured, it was more important to strengthen oneself. After all, North Korea was not the first vassal state to be captured. Zhu Qiyu agreed, and Su Yozhen joined forces with some courtiers who were on good terms with him. In the end, when they finally took down the Joseon dynasty, Yang Qindong only had to pay the price of 50,000 warhorses. Moreover, it wasn't for free. It was a loan to the northern Ming dynasty, which had to be converted into silver and returned in the future. Of course, he owed too much. It was hard to say whether he could pay it back, but at least he owed money in name. The 5-star army actually captured North Korea in such a short period of time. This matter also made Su Yozhen have a further understanding of Yang Qindong's strength and understanding. After all, it was just some small countries in the south. It could be said that the barren land was occupied, and its influence was far from being so big. Then how powerful was the 5-star army? Su Yozhen had an idea. If possible, he wanted to go to the grassland's first city to take a look. He wanted to see what kind of scale Yang Xie's development had reached. If he wanted to go, he needed a dignified reason. Now that Sambuchuan was surrounded and in danger, he saw this as an opportunity. Su Yozhen stood up and spoke to the emperor. There was another reason why Su Yozhen had the courage to stand up. He believed that Yang Qindong did not want to see the 200,000 Baiming soldiers in Sambuchuan get eaten by the grassland's foreign tribes. It was to cater to this idea that he chose to take the initiative to attack. Chapter 967. Your Majesty, Sambulachuan is not far from the first city. Since the Duke of Zhongwei can gain a foothold there, he must have military strength as his backing. If we can ask him to help, it shouldn't be a big problem for him to only transport grain and not help in the war. Su Yozhen stood up and said in a guessing tone. The important thing was that he emphasized one thing, which was that Yang Qindong would not help Baiming. He would only help to transport the grain. He said this in order to stop Zhu Qiyu's mouth and make things clear first. It might be possible to help transport the grain, but helping Baiming to fight the war was not worth mentioning. Because this was not Yang Qindong's intention. Originally, when Zhu Qiyu heard Yang Qindong's name, he had such an idea and asked the Duke of Zhongwei to send troops to help. Your title was given to you by the Great Ming Dynasty. Now that the Great Ming Dynasty was in trouble, it was not too much to ask for your troops. But when he heard Su Yozhen's words, he knew that he might have thought too much. However, he still wanted to try harder. After all, if Yang Qindong was really willing to participate in the war, whether they could win the war or not, at least they could get someone to share the firepower. But before Zhu Qiyu could speak, Governor Shi Heng had already stood up. He cupped his fist and said, Your Majesty, Minister Su's words are very reasonable. The Duke of Zhongwei can help us transport the grain. As long as we defend Sambulachuan for 2 months, our army will arrive. At that time, the situation will be completely one-sided. At that time, our army's victory will be expected, and our Baiming army will not need any help. Shi Heng suddenly stood up, not because he had discussed it with Su Yozhen in advance. He just didn't want Yang Qindong to take advantage of it. In his eyes, Baiming's army was powerful and invincible. One day, even the Duke of Zhongwei and his 5-star army would be trampled under his feet. But if he owed the other side a big favor now, how could he fight the war in the future? Shi Heng was looking at things from a long-term perspective, which was why he said those words. As the main representative of the military, Zhu Qiyu knew that it was impossible to ask the Duke of Loyalty to send troops to participate in the battle. He could only nod his head and say, "All right, since that's the case, Minister Su, in your opinion, who should be sent to the Duke of Loyalty and Courage?" As he spoke, Zhu Qiyu's gaze swept across the group of courtiers. Unfortunately, many of the officials did not even raise their heads. In their hearts, asking for help from the Duke of Loyalty was not a good task. "Your Majesty, this idea was thought of by this subject, so this subject is naturally willing to go." Su Yozhen wanted to take this opportunity to test Yang Qindong's strength. Naturally, she wanted to go. Since the other courtiers were unwilling to go, it saved him a lot of effort and he didn't have to worry about anyone competing with him. It was Su Yozhen who took the initiative to step forward. Zhu Qiyu was overjoyed. Thinking of seeing a loyal official in a time of danger, he couldn't help but value Su Yozhen more. Thinking that this person had been promoted by him after he ascended to the throne, perhaps there would be a chance to put her in an important position. Immediately, he announced Su Yozhen as an imperial envoy to go to Shi City to discuss with the Duke of Loyalty and Courage the matter of assisting Sanbula Chuan City with provisions. For the sake of convenience, he gave Su Yozhen the power to act and the power to mobilize the soldiers of Xianfu. Su Yozhen immediately knelt on the ground and shouted, "Long live the emperor!" Zhu Qiyu, who was very satisfied, was even happier. He nodded lightly at Qing, who was standing to the side with her back bent. The chief eunuch immediately understood and shouted loudly, "Court is dismissed. Minister Su, please stay. His Majesty wants to see you." The other courtiers left after shouting, "Long live the emperor." Su Yozhen walked straight to the back of the palace and ran into the chief eunuch Qing, who had come to greet him. The other chuckled and said in a congratulatory tone, "Congratulations to Minister Su for becoming an imperial envoy." "Ah, Jin Gonggang, what are you saying? We are all working for His Majesty. There is no need to mention any congratulations. It should be the same." Su Yozhen also had a smile on his face. As he spoke, a banknote of 1,000 taels of silver was passed from his hand to Jin Ying's hand without anyone noticing. His gaze turned slightly. After glancing at the banknote in his hand, Jin Ying's expression became even more joyful. "Minister Su is truly a pillar of the country. Don't worry. Since Minister Su has the heart, this Gonggang will naturally help where it is necessary. Many thanks, many thanks." Su Yozhen cupped his hands in thanks. The two of them walked almost side by side to the back of the palace. Zhu Qiyu had been waiting in the palace for a long time. When he saw Su Yozhen come, he couldn't hide the joy in the corners of his eyes. When all the courtiers were at their wits' end, this person could stand up and find a way to solve the problem. He was also willing to bravely take on the heavy burden. Based on these, he should value him more. "Someone, give Minister Su a seat. This official doesn't dare." Su Yozhen immediately revealed a look of fear and trepidation. Speaking of which, this was the first time he was given a seat when he met with the emperor in private. "Ah, Minister Su, this is His Majesty's good intentions. You were able to stand up in times of danger. This seat must be given." Jining, who had just received the banknote, immediately stood up and spoke to smooth things over. Su Yozhen, who had been polite to begin with, immediately revealed a very grateful expression. The rims of his eyes even reddened. It was as if he was about to shed tears of gratitude. He said, "This official thanks His Majesty." "Many thanks His Majesty." Su Yozhen's buttock sat down on the chair. What followed was naturally a scene of the monarch and his courtier chatting happily. "Minister Su, this time, you were able to take the initiative to stand up, come up with an idea, and accept this task. Shen is very comforted. However, how confident are you that you will be able to persuade the Duke of Loyal Courage to transport the provisions for our army?" Zhu Qiyu's eyes were filled with anticipation as he asked. Although Su Yozhen was sitting on the chair, he still had a look of fear and trepidation. Seeing the emperor ask, he quickly replied, in reply to His Majesty, "About 50%? 50%? Only that much?" Zhu Qiyu's brows furrowed. He was clearly a bit dissatisfied. If that was the case, wouldn't it be very likely that he would be rejected? If that was the case, then as the emperor, his order was actually rejected by a subordinate. This was not a dignified thing to do. Even as the emperor, he cared a lot about face. Or perhaps he knew that he couldn't do it and still did it, so it was better not to do it. At least if he lost, his face would still be there. This was better than losing everything and being laughed at in private. Su Yozhen had been paying attention to the changes in Zhu Qiyu's expression. When he saw that the emperor was displeased, he quickly said, "Your Majesty. Although the Duke of Loyal Courage doesn't need to participate in the battle this time, transporting the provisions to the heavily surrounded Sanbu Lashuan city is no different from going to the battlefield. This official really doesn't have 100% confidence that I can persuade the Duke of Loyal Courage. Moreover, you also know that this official and the Duke of Loyal Courage have never gotten along. In the past, this official has even participated in a memorial to him. Speaking of which, this official really isn't a good persuader. If possible, could your Majesty consider sending someone else?" Retreating in order to advance was what Su Yozhen wanted to express. He was prepared to make a request. If he couldn't take the initiative in his hands, how could this request be discussed? Zhu Qiyu naturally knew about the discord between Su Yozhen and Yang Qindong. This was also the important reason why he was relieved to promote this person. This time, when he was sent to the beginning city, he didn't have to worry about the two colluding. This was also the reason why he agreed to let the other party be the imperial envoy so quickly. Now that he heard that Su Yozhen wanted to shirk the responsibility, how could Zhu Qiyu be willing to let it go? He immediately said, "Dear official Su, what do you mean? Zhen has just issued a decree in front of all the civil and military officials. How can I casually take it back? Zhen thinks that you should go. If you have any requests, you can make them now. As long as the Duke of Loyal Courage can help transport the provisions, any conditions can be discussed." Zhu Qiyu also had no other choice. Not only was he optimistic that Su Yozhen was a suitable candidate, but the important thing was that the other court officials didn't have the intention to go. Even though he was the emperor and could make a decision at will, no one dared to refuse when he asked the court officials to go. But what good result could there be if they were forced? If they messed up the task, then there would be no medicine for regret. On the other hand, Su Yozhen was the one who came up with the idea, thought of the method, and recommended himself to go. Presumably, he was mentally prepared. There was no need to give up a suitable candidate and use someone else. Zhu Qiyu agreed to raise conditions and requests. Su Yozhen was waiting for this sentence. He immediately stood up, clasped his fist, and said with an incomparably solemn expression, "I have a way to guarantee that the Duke of Loyal Courage will send troops to transport the provisions." "Guarantee? Are you 100% sure?" Zhu Qiyu's eyes lit up as he asked. "Yes, 100% sure," Su Yozhen said with a tone that said he was going all out. "Okay, tell me." Zhu Qiyu didn't agree in a hot-headed manner. Instead, he wanted to hear what the request was first. It was enough to see that after being the emperor for a few years, he had learned to be calm and had learned to leave a trick up his sleeve. With a conflicted expression, Su Yozhen didn't immediately reply. He knelt on the ground with a plop and said, "Emperor, I have no selfish motives for what I am about to say. It is only for the sake of Baiming's strength and future. I ask for Emperor's forgiveness for what I have said." "Beloved official Su, what do you mean? This is a meeting between us ruler and official, not a court discussion. If you have anything to say, just say it. Zhen will forgive you," Zhu Qiyu said. "Many thanks, Your Majesty. That being the case, this subject's only request is for Your Majesty to grant Duke Zhongdan the title of Great Bright Prince. With this request, this subject can guarantee that Duke Zhongdan will be of use to us and dispatch troops to transport grain." Kneeling on the ground, Su Yozhen saw that the time was right and said what he had prepared to say. Although Zhu Qiyu had made some preparations, he knew that he had to pay a price if he wanted to reach 100% from 50%. But when he heard Su Yozhen's request, he still couldn't hide the anger on his face. What? Grant the title of king? How is that possible? Zhu Qiyu couldn't be blamed for being so angry. Since the Great Ming Dynasty's Emperor Taizu, the Great Ming Dynasty had stopped granting titles to people with different surnames. How could this rule be easily broken by him? Su Yozhen's proposal was too absurd. Chapter 968. Zhu Qiyu was angry, but Su Yozhen was not afraid. The current situation did not allow Dai Zong to make any other choice. If he could not make this request now, it would be even harder to find an opportunity in the future. Thus, he did not immediately speak. Instead, he looked at Jining beside Zhu Qiyu. Since he had taken his money, it was time for him to speak up for him. Jining, who had only taken 1,000 taels of silver, was furious. Originally, he thought that Su Yozhen was going to be put in an important position. It would be beneficial for him to have a good relationship with him. In addition, there was money to be taken. Wasn't this the best of both worlds? But now, this daring Su Yozhen actually proposed to make Yang Qindong Wang. This was something the emperor would never agree to. How did he have the guts to say this? It was only 1,000 taels of silver. It was impossible to order him to do such a big thing. At this moment, he kept his mouth tightly shut. He had even thought of returning the 1,000 taels of silver to Su Yozhen when he sent her out. The emperor did not speak. Jining also did not speak. Su Yozhen simply knelt on the ground and did not speak. For a moment, the rear hall was silent. You could hear a pin drop. After a full quarter of an hour, Zhu Qiyu saw that Su Yozhen did not speak. He did not admit his mistake and did not take back his request. He couldn't help but say angrily, "Beloved official Su, your suggestion is not acceptable. You should change your request." "Yes, then please take off this official's imperial envoy hat and send this official to prison," Su Yozhen said without backing down. Prison? Zhu Qiyu's eyes widened. Yes, without this condition, this official cannot convince the Duke of loyalty. Since this is the case, it is better not to go this time. Your Majesty can use this time to think of other methods. The lives of 200,000 soldiers cannot wait for long, Your Majesty. Su Yozhen spoke as if there was no other way. In the end, he did not forget to threaten with the lives of 200,000 Baiming soldiers. Hearing the threat, Zhu Qiyu immediately stood up from the dragon throne and said angrily, "Is there no other way other than this? This subject is slow-witted and cannot think of a better way." Su Yozhen simply knelt on the ground and said without even raising his head. He knew that this was a risky move, but if he succeeded, the return would be worth it. If he could help Yang Qindong ascend to the throne, his achievements would naturally not be small. In the future, when the 5-star army was formed, he would be able to take the opportunity to obtain more benefits. Seeing that Su Yozhen had no intention of backing down, Zhu Qiyu was so angry that his entire body was trembling. He had thought that this person had come up with a good plan. It turned out that she wanted to confer the title of king on Yang Qindong. That being the case, it was not impossible for anyone to take this decision to force Yang Qindong to transport grain, or even to send troops. To the side, Jining hadn't thought that the situation would be in such a deadlock. Seeing the emperor's dragon countenance grow angry, she immediately urged, "Your Majesty, please calm down. Your Majesty, please calm down. You must not harm your body over such a small matter. If your Majesty believes this subject, please go to the back of the hall to rest. This subject and Minister Su will have a good discussion." "Fine, it is impossible to confer the title of king. This matter must be completed. Minister Jin, do as you see fit." Zhu Qiyu really wanted to punish Su Yozhen, but he was worried that other than this person, no one else would be willing to step forward to solve the problem. He could only take a step back and see what the head eunuch beside him had to do. Zhu Qiyu left angrily. When only Su Shangshu and Jining were left in the hall, Su Yozhen slowly and unhurriedly stood up. She even casually patted the dust off her knees. There was not a trace of panic or nervousness on her face. Su Yozhen had originally thought that he had angered the emperor and was already in a state of fear and trepidation. Unexpectedly, he was not afraid at all and even had the time to put on an act. Jining was also angry and said, "Minister Su, you've gone too far. You've gone too far." Ha! Su Yozhen did not show any fear because of the other's anger. On the contrary, he smiled and said, "Jin Gonggang, do you think we have a choice right now? On one hand is the lives of 200,000 Baiming soldiers. On the other hand, it is only the title of king. I think Jin Gonggang can distinguish which is more important. The emperor clearly will not confer the title of king. How could Jining not know the importance of this matter?" But when he thought of Zhu Qiyu's attitude, he still spoke truthfully. 50,000 taels. After this matter is completed, I will tell Duke of Zhongdang what Jin Gonggang has done. I think he will be able to take out 50,000 taels. Su Yozhen did not wait for Jining to continue speaking and had already given a good price. This price stunned Jining. Then he said with a suspicious expression, "Could it be that Minister Su is one of Duke of Zhongdang's people?" Ha, what a joke. Su Yozhen's expression did not change and his heart did not skip a beat. Everyone knows what I have done to Duke of Zhongdang in the past. How could I be one of his people? This minister only thinks that this should be what Duke of Zhongdang wants. When the time comes, taking the opportunity to ask for some silver taels should not be excessive. Duke of Zhongdang is rich. I think many people know this. This explanation temporarily dispelled Jin Ying's misgivings. When he thought about it, it was true. Yang Qindong had wanted the title of king for a long time. This was something everyone knew. Su Yozhen was just using his title. But when he thought of the emperor's angry expression just now, he said inwardly, the matter of being conferred the title of king is not a child's play. I'm afraid the emperor will not agree so easily. 100,000 taels. Once again, Su Yozhen took the initiative to raise the price. This time, there was a trace of seriousness in her tone. This is already the upper limit. I'm afraid that even if this minister personally makes a move, I can only obtain this from Duke Zhongdan. I have given my own share to Duke Gong. If it really doesn't work, then there is no need to discuss anymore. If the emperor is angry at me because of this, then this minister will accept it. Once I leave the palace, I will go to the prison and not trouble others. The benefits doubled again, reaching 100,000 taels of silver. Jining, who had already been moved, was completely defeated by the money. His expression changed again and again. He thought to himself, it was just conferring Yang Qindong the title of king with a different surname. It was not like he was handing over the country to him. He could get 100,000 taels of silver. That was half of his wealth. At the same time, he could solve the emperor's problem. Why not? Jining did not immediately speak. After Su Yozhen saw this, he knew there was a chance. He continued, the matter of conferring a title of king with a different surname has already been broken by the southern Minging sect. We, Baiming, are just following suit. It is not much. Besides, even if it is a title of king, we can still do something about it. Oh. What is there to do? Jining was interested. Although he was someone Zhu Qiyu trusted very much, if he wanted to convince the other on such a big matter, he needed a good reason. Su Yozhen knew this meant that Jining had agreed. Now, it was time to solve the problem from a practical point of view. He immediately said what he was thinking. Jin Gonggang, since ancient times, the title of king has been given based on the fief. Then, we can give the Duke of Loyalty the title of Bugnam of Gojoseon. This is equivalent to us giving him the fief of the southern wastelands. At that time, the one who will have a headache will be Ying's sect. What loss will we have? Bugnam of Gojoseon. Hearing this title, Qing could imagine how angry the Southern Ming Emperor would be after this matter. He might even be furious. This should be what the Emperor wanted to see. He could vent the Emperor's anger and resolve the crisis in front of him. He could even get 100,000 taels of silver. No matter how he looked at it, this was a suitable transaction. At this moment, a smile appeared on his face. Then, he and Su Yozhen burst out laughing together. After Qing was convinced, he turned and walked towards the back of the hall. He didn't know what method he used. Perhaps Zhu Qiyu just wanted a way out. In any case, an hour later, Su Yozhen waited for Qing, who was holding the imperial edict. Minister Su, the emperor is wise and decisive. He has already agreed to confer the title of Bugnam of Gojoseon to the Duke of Loyalty. This is the imperial edict. Qing raised the imperial edict in his hand with a proud expression. Jin Gonggang is very capable. Su Yozhen gave him a thumbs up and sincerely praised him. Such an important matter as being conferred the title of prince was actually done by a single eunuch. It had to be said that the power of the eunuchs was truly heaven-defying. Just as Su Yozhen was about to reach out and take the imperial edict, Qing suddenly put the edict behind his back and said, "Minister Su, it is too late. The emperor has another request. This time, all of the grain needed in Sanbuchuan City will be provided by the Duke of Loyalty." This shouldn't be a problem, right? He didn't expect that Dai Zong would want to take advantage of such a small matter. He didn't have the bearing of a great nation at all. However, when he thought about how Yang Xie's power could sell grain to the Southern Ming at a fair price, he thought that there shouldn't be a lack of grain. This shouldn't be a problem. He made the decision to agree. All right. And, when will we be able to get the 100,000 taels of silver? Qing put forward her second request first before her personal one. Su Yozhen cursed the other for being greedy in his heart. He didn't think that he wasn't much better. However, at this moment, he still explained, "Jin Gonggang, I haven't even seen the Duke of Loyalty. Where will I get the silver to pay? However, please don't worry. Since I have agreed, I will naturally do it. When I return from the origin city, it will be the day that the silver will be presented. If I don't fulfill my promise, with Jin Gonggang's power in the embroidered uniform guard, it won't be difficult to imprison me." "Ha, Minister Su, what are you saying? I was just joking just now." After getting the answer he wanted, Qing immediately laughed and handed the imperial edict to Su Yozhen. "Minister Su, when Sanbuchuan City is rescued, it will be the time when the emperor will personally announce the imperial edict to the world. This imperial edict will be enough to reassure the Duke of Loyalty." The moment Qing handed over the imperial edict, he also mentioned the time when the imperial edict would be announced. Chapter 969. Good, good. Su Yozhen looked at the imperial edict carefully, and after finding that there were no problems, he was overjoyed. With this imperial edict, he had made a great contribution. With this contribution, his position in the Yang Xia would be secured. After all the officials left, Su Yozhen returned to his residence in the capital when it was almost dark. Then, he ordered people to prepare his luggage and left the capital early the next morning. Under the protection of 1,000 guards, he left the capital from Baiming to the Xian mansion. On the plains, after several days of preparation, under the orders of Yes Hen, the Wara began to attack the city of Sanbuchuan. They used the Baiming red coat cannons to bombard the city walls and used their own spears to attack the enemy's shields, causing Shi Wanshan's forces to be under considerable pressure and casualties. Fortunately, there were many generals in the city. Under the leadership of Commander Shi, nearly 200,000 Baiming generals took turns to defend the city, and the two sides quickly entered a stalemate. The Wara were mostly cavalry, and they were not very good at siege work. Although they had the advantage of the red coat cannons, the number of shells was limited, and it did not take long before they ran out of ammunition. Seeing the strong will of the Baiming army to resist, Yes Hen knew that the cannons could not achieve their goal of capturing the city, so he sent people to the Yili dynasty to ask for reinforcements. If there were any benefits, the two sides would share the benefits equally. Yili town was located to the north of Hetao, east of the Yili dynasty, and was an important transportation hub. At this moment, a virtuous official, Syed Ali Apel, who was also the prime minister of the Yili dynasty, was receiving General Kun Sa, who had just returned from the front lines in defeat. After Kun Sa met with Prime Minister Apel, he recounted how he had failed to negotiate with the five-star army, and how he had been ambushed by the enemy. Then, with an aggrieved expression, he begged the prime minister to avenge him, as well as the loss of 27,000 soldiers. Apu was a famous minister in history. He had great foresight and was very opinionated. He did not take Kun Sa's words at face value. Instead, he comforted Kun Sa and advised him to get some rest. Then, he called for Kun Sa's lieutenant, Wuli Ji, and one of the 50 soldiers who had followed Kun Sa and Qing. Through talking with them, he learned the truth of the matter. Seated alone in his residence, Arab had an extremely complicated expression on his face. He had already investigated the matter. First, he and Qing spoke rudely, which led to their nose being cut off. Then, they thought they knew the truth about the five-star army and wanted to launch a night attack. In the end, they were ambushed and defeated. Speaking of which, all of this seemed unreasonable, but in fact, the ones who were at a disadvantage were the cavalry of Yili. As their prime minister, he also had to do something. Otherwise, the morale of the army would be greatly affected. If that was the case, it would be difficult to lead the army. In front of him was all the information about the five-star army sent by the Scouts and Intelligence Department. Arab received an answer. The five-star army was powerful and had great financial resources. They were an extremely difficult opponent to deal with. Especially the speed of their development, it gave people a feeling of stupefaction. He even had a premonition that if he allowed the five-star army to continue developing like this, he was afraid that there would be a day where a huge battle would break out between him and the five-star army. If that was the case, it would be impossible for him not to fight even if he wanted to. Since there was going to be a battle sooner or later, why not take advantage of the fact that the other party wasn't ready for a bloody battle? Even if they couldn't destroy the five-star corps, they could use this battle to deplete the other party's strength and give themselves more time to develop. Arab was a very far-sighted person. It was like when others could only see one step ahead, he could already see 2 steps ahead. For the future, in order to maintain the general situation of the grassland, he finally made preparations to attack the five-star army. Arab, who had not slept the whole night, welcomed General Kun Sa, who had rested for the night. The Prime Minister then said in a very confident tone, "The five-star army has used despicable means to hurt our army. If we can tolerate this, what else can we do? For the sake of Yili's dignity, this time we must teach them a lesson." "The Prime Minister is wise," Kun Sa said excitedly after he received the support. Arab nodded and changed the topic. "It's just that the five-star army is not so easy to deal with. Since we are going to fight, we must find a way to win. An alliance with the world of Wara is inevitable. How about this, our army will go to the Shajing area first and discuss with Chief Yeshen before we fight." This general obeys. When Kun Sa saw that this was going to be a big fight, he was so excited that his face turned red. It was time for him to make a contribution and take revenge. This time, the Kingdom of Yili sent a total of 180,000 troops at Yeshen's request. Apart from the 10,000 cavalry, 20,000 infantry, and 30,000 cavalry that were killed by the five-star army, the rest of the 100,000 cavalry and 50,000 infantry were all brought to the battlefield. This time, in order to achieve the goal of severely damaging the five-star army in one attack, Prime Minister Arab gave the order and the 150,000 troops set out from Yili city to the Shajing area, which was a few hundred miles away. In the Hetao area, only General Bo Muir from the world of Wara and his 80,000 cavalry and 20,000 infantry were left. Even so, the Datong soldiers were still scared into hiding in the Ningxia garrison and did not dare to take a step out. After all these years of development, Yeshin's strength had also grown. He now had a total of 270,000 troops, of which 20,000 were infantry and the rest were cavalry. Other than the 100,000 troops that were left behind to guard the Hetao area, he still had 170,000 cavalry soldiers. Most of them were brave warriors who could fight in battle, so they were not to be underestimated. It was a pity that cavalry soldiers were good at destroying their opponents while moving. Siege warfare like this was not their forte. Just like now, even after using up all 100 of the Baiming's red coat cannons, they were still unable to take down Sanbulachuan. At this moment, they could only sigh as they looked at the heavily damaged city not far away. Reporting, Lord Chief, the Prime Minister of the Ili Kingdom, Ali Pu, personally led a total of 150,000 soldiers from Ili Kingdom towards us from Ili Kingdom. The scout half knelt and reported the battle situation. Arab is here, ha, good. With them, it won't be difficult to capture Sanbuchuan city. Ha ha ha. Hearing this, Yi Xian was naturally overjoyed. Truly, a pillow came when one was sleepy. At the same time, in the Yang residence in Genesis City, Yang Qindong received a report from the scouts on the front lines. The report stated that Ali Pu was leading 150,000 soldiers to the Sha-Jing region, but his intentions were unclear. Standing in front of the sand table, Yang Qindong stood there for a long time, but he did not understand the main point. He was thinking about a question. Who was the target of the Ili army this time? If they were coming for the Baiming army, then why didn't they come with Yes Hen? Why did they only come after the vanguard suffered a loss? Was it possible that they were here to take revenge? Did they really have the guts to do so? As the saying goes, the ignorant are innocent. The power of the Five-Star Army was known by the nearby grassland tribes. Therefore, the Five-Star Army had long become an existence that no one dared to provoke. But because the distance was too far, the Ili army did not know the real situation of the Five-Star Army. Without understanding the situation, they might really do something stupid. Before he could figure this out completely, his personal telegrapher, Wang Shan, sent another telegram from the Security Bureau of the Northern Ming Dynasty. It explained in detail what happened in the imperial court of the Northern Ming Dynasty and how Su Yozhen, the minister of the Ministry of Justice, asked to come to Shi City to persuade him to provide provisions to Sanbuchuan City. Interesting. Looking at this telegram, Yang Qindong's eyes flashed with a meaningful smile. He had a feeling that Su Yozhen must have come to give him some good news. Otherwise, he wouldn't make such a big decision without asking for his permission. It was just that Baiming already owed him 11 million taels of silver. What benefits could they give him? Yang Qindong was not a god. Su Yozhen did not leak the news that he was going to be crowned king in advance. Of course, he would not be able to guess. Su Yozhen, who brought the imperial edict, rode a fast horse day and night after leaving Baiming's capital. Now that the military situation was urgent, there was no time to waste. The most important thing was that if the Five-Star Army couldn't provide provisions to Sanbulachuan in time, once the city was breached, all of his plans would fail. The so-called Qing conferment would also come to nothing. In that case, his so-called great achievements would also disappear without a trace. Not wanting to see such an outcome, Su Yozhen was forced to change horses and not people along the way. The journey that should have taken a month took only 13 days to get out of Talu's city and to the foot of the city. Su Yozhen was Baiming's Minister of Justice, a major second-rank civil official. He was an extremely important person even without any auxiliary officials. In order to show his respect, Yang Qindong took the initiative to come out of the city to welcome him. Several thousand cavalry stood on both sides, displaying such a grand display. While Su Yozhen, who had just arrived, was extremely moved, he was also inwardly shocked. As the Minister of Justice, he had tens of thousands of bailiffs under his command. Among them, there was no lack of capable people with extraordinary means. There were even some people who had made quite a name for themselves. Their murderous aura could often make criminals tremble all over just by standing there, and they would open their mouths to plead guilty before being tortured. Just from this aspect alone, Su Yozhen could be considered someone who had seen a bit of the world. At the very least, a normal formation would not scare him. In his eyes, the killing intent of a murderer was nothing much. He was already used to it. Only now, when he saw these cavalry soldiers, did he understand what it meant to be a small fry in front of a great one. There would always be someone stronger. Chapter 970. These cavalrymen were just sitting on their horses, but their murderous aura was overflowing. They were imposing without being angry, giving Su Yozhen a very oppressive feeling. In addition, they had been on the road non-stop for days without rest. At this moment, his face was frighteningly pale. "You can all leave." Yang Qindong noticed the change in Su Yozhen and knew that the deterrence effect had worked. He immediately waved his hand at the commander of the 1st Cavalry Division, Tian Hu. That's right, the cavalrymen who stood on both sides and temporarily acted as the welcoming team were Tian Hu's 1st Cavalry Division. This was their first appearance after returning to the beginning city. Before this, Tian Hu had been selecting and evaluating the new members of the cavalry division. From the original 3 divisions to the current 5 divisions, almost half of the military strength was expanded. This was naturally a good thing for Tian Hu. However, how to increase the number of people without losing the combat power was the problem he should consider. In order to achieve the individual quality of every soldier and to be able to exert enough strength and play a role on the battlefield, Tian Hu personally participated in the evaluation. In this way, he selected people one by one. It was not easy to gather more than 4,000 people and complete the task of expanding the division. It was just a source of 4,000 soldiers, but it took a few months. Just from this point alone, the combat power of the 1st Cavalry Division would only become stronger. Even Yang Qindong was looking forward to their performance on the battlefield. The 1st Cavalry Division's first appearance scared the senior officials sent by the Imperial Court of Baiming. Although the commander, Tian Hu, looked serious, he was in a good mood. Obviously, he was very satisfied with this result. Until Yang Qindong waved his hand, he led the team to continue their inhuman training. Perhaps Su Yozhen was tired, or perhaps she was afraid, but she was sent to rest in the carriage. Yang Qindong wanted to know the other party's intentions for coming here, mainly to see what kind of conditions the substitute sect master Zhu Qiyu could offer, and whether or not he would be moved. However, looking at Su Yozhen's current state, it was clear that they couldn't discuss anything. He had no choice but to arrange for him to stay in the guest house at the beginning of the city and wait for him to rest. Su Yozhen had a good sleep. He slept from the afternoon all the way until the next morning. When he opened his eyes and woke up, he felt much less tired. At this moment, it could be said that his ears and eyes were sharp, and he was full of energy. After waking up early in the morning and changing into clean clothes, Su Yozhen was attracted by the hawkers outside the guest house. He decided not to ask someone to prepare breakfast. Instead, he decided to go out for a walk and try the local snacks. Under the protection of a squad of soldiers in the open and in the dark, Su Yozhen came to the street. He saw a very bustling scene, a street market that was not inferior to the morning market of the capital. When he saw the people in costumes of various races walking in a friendly and harmonious manner on the wide street, and the peddlers selling food, clothes, necessities, and toys were next to each other, and there were people standing in front of each stall, he could not help but ask the guide arranged for him by the guest house curiously, "Everyone is from different races, how can they get along harmoniously? How can the language problem be solved? What if there is a dispute?" The guide was a man in his 30s. He was originally a squad leader of the new army, but his leg was injured in a battle. He could not gallop freely on a horse, so he retired and worked in the guest house. As someone who had seen much of the world, he had received countless guests and encountered all kinds of questions. He was not surprised by Su Yozhen's curiosity at all. Instead, he explained with a face full of enthusiasm. "Sir, please rest assured. The language problem has long been regulated. When you enter the first city, you must speak Chinese in public. For this reason, there is a special Chinese class for everyone to learn, and it is free. In the first city, only after learning Chinese can one be allowed to do business. When everyone speaks Chinese, there is naturally no problem of language barriers. Once there is a dispute, there will be special management personnel to judge who is right and wrong. However, at the same time, any fighting is prohibited in the city. Otherwise, no matter who is right or wrong, they will be severely punished. Facing the guide with a smile, Suyozhen first nodded and then shook his head. There were also laws in the capital. If one did something bad or wrong, one would be locked up in the Ministry of Justice. However, such things could not be eliminated. Why was there also a law to regulate it? It seemed that the public security in the first city was very orderly. Until now, he had not seen a case of an argument, let alone a fight. Huai Yu was puzzled and could not help but ask again, the law here must be very strict, right? It was no wonder that Suyozhen would have such a thought. If the law was not strict, there would definitely be people who could not help but suppress their temper and violate the law. Only harsh laws could make people have no choice but to restrain their temperament under high pressure. Sir, you're right. The law in the first city is quite strict. Once someone makes a mistake, the lightest punishment is a warning, and the heaviest punishment is a beheading. The guide nodded and answered with a straight face. Beheaded? That will make everyone afraid from the bottom of their hearts. Suyozhen said this as the Minister of Justice. As soon as he finished speaking, the guide beside him shook his head. Sir, you're wrong. Although there is the crime of being beheaded, in fact, there are very few people who are beheaded. After all, if they are not vicious and evil people, they won't be sentenced to such a heavy sentence. In fact, what everyone is most afraid of is being kicked out of the first city and being ordered to never enter all the cities under the jurisdiction of the 5-star army. This is the most unacceptable thing for ordinary people. Being expelled. Although this is also a heavy sentence, it doesn't seem to be a very serious matter. Suyozhen had a look of disagreement on her face. It's just being kicked out of the city. Isn't there a saying in the underworld that if there's no place for you, there will be a place for you? No. Sir, you don't know, but all the cities under the control of the 5-star army are guaranteed safety. Once you enter such a city, it's equivalent to having a guarantee of safety. This guarantee is something that the grassland people didn't have in the past. They're used to wandering around, especially in recent years. They're even prepared to have a machete on their necks in the middle of the night when they sleep at night. This makes them feel too insecure, and this sense of security happens to be given to everyone by the 5-star army. Therefore, the right to live in the city is precious to many people. At this point, the guide introduced with a smile, Sir, if you don't believe me, you can go and see if the people in the city have a relaxed smile on their faces. This is the charm of the 5-star army's city because everyone knows that as long as they abide by the law here, no one will threaten their safety. They can also live a happy life with their hands. Isn't this what the ordinary people need? The words what the ordinary people need caused Suyozhen's face to turn red. Indeed, what the ordinary people wanted was to have food to eat, clothes to wear, and a house to sleep in. As long as these conditions were met, they would usually become very obedient under normal circumstances. However, this simple request wasn't something that all governments could fulfill. They continued to walk on the street, looking and carefully observing. Just as the guide said, most of the ordinary people had a very natural and relaxed smile on their faces. This kind of smile was rare even in the capital of Baiming. It had been less than 3 years since the establishment of the first city, but now it was so prosperous. Just on this point, Suyozhen had to admire Yang Qindong's ability. This made him even more determined to follow in Yang Qindong's footsteps and not waver easily. After having breakfast on the street, he found time to chat with some ordinary people. After having a clearer understanding of the situation in the first city, Beta Persei appeared beside him. Minister Su, you're in a good mood. Ah. It's Brother Beta Persei. Did the Duke of Loyalty summon me? At this moment, Su Yozhen's attitude became more respectful. That's right. I went to the guest house and found that Sir Su was not there. It turns out that you're here to check on the situation of the people. How is it? When are you going to see the young master? Beta Persei said unhurriedly. Originally, Yang Qindong's order to him was very relaxed, and everything was based on Su Yozhen's own decision. I'll go now, I'll go now. Su Yozhen held a copy of the First City's Yang report in his hand and raised his arm. From this newspaper, he had a clearer understanding of the situation in the First City. He had a clear understanding that this was indeed a developing and thriving city. Although its foundation was still lacking, it was full of vitality. Anyone with a little knowledge could see its potential. In particular, Yang Baozhong had specially opened a current affairs column, which clearly talked about the war that was going on in Sambuchuan City hundreds of miles away. Everything was written on the surface, but there was not the slightest bit of panic in the First City. This alone was something that the capital of Baiming could not compare to. Compared to the people there who were afraid of war and the imperial court had to block all unfavorable news of the war, the calmness of the people here surprised Su Yozhen. They were not afraid of war. What kind of courage was this? How did Yang Qindong do this? All of this made Su Yozhen curious. Now, he wanted to see Yang Qindong and get an answer. Okay, Sir Su, please come with me. Yang Er smiled as he led the way. Su Yozhen was in the middle of the group. It was unknown when, but many soldiers in civilian clothes had appeared behind her. They were protecting her very tightly. After all, Su Yozhen came to represent the face of Baiming. There must be no accidents. Chapter 971. In the Yang residence, various fruits had already been placed on the stone table in the courtyard, and the freshly brewed tea leaves were still steaming. When Su Yozhen arrived, she saw Yang Qindong looking at Yang Bao leisurely. This was almost a daily homework for Yang Qindong. He would learn about what happened yesterday through the newspaper. If he thought something was important, he would pay extra attention to it. When necessary, he would order people to deal with it. This not only made him closer to the people, but also gave them a sense of loyalty and courage, which increased the importance of Yang Bao in the First City. Young Master, Lord Su is here. Beta Persei's voice could be heard from a distance. When Yang Qindong turned his head, he saw Su Yozhen standing there respectfully a few steps away. His head was slightly lowered, and he looked like a subordinate meeting a superior. Yang Qindong was not surprised that Su Yozhen would have such an attitude. With the reminder that he had personally gone to Baiming's capital last time, and seeing the prosperity of the First City this time, as long as there was nothing wrong with his brain, he would know what kind of attitude he should have after seeing him. Come, Minister Su, come and take a seat. Yang Qindong waved his hand while he was still far away. Su Yozhen quickly agreed and hurried over. As he walked forward, Yang Qindong's voice could be heard again. Beta Persei, pass down the order. If there is nothing particularly important this morning, the young master will not see any guests. Understood. Beta Persei agreed and left. Soon, there was the sound of the courtyard door closing behind him, indicating that Yang Qindong was going to have a long talk with him. Su Yozhen hurried over and sat down opposite Yang Qindong. When he looked up, his eyes were filled with curiosity, doubt, and even admiration. Yang Qindong saw Su Yozhen's performance from the corner of his eyes and smiled in his heart. If a capable person wanted to control him, he would have to show more ability. Clearly, he had done it now. Minister Su, you've traveled thousands of miles to come here. You must have something to teach me, right? But I wonder if it's good news. It's good news, great news, sixth young master. After being stared at by Yang Qindong, Su Yozhen's original intention of playing with him disappeared. She stretched out her hand and took out her trump card, the imperial edict that conferred the title of king. His original intention to bargain was no longer there. The only thing left was how to make Yang Qindong happy and please him. Sixth young master, this is the imperial edict of bestowment that I have spent a great deal of effort to get from the Daizong Emperor. Please take a look and see if you are satisfied. Coronation Imperial Decree. Yang Qindong, who had originally ignored everything that had happened, had a change in expression at this moment. Yang Qindong had tried many times to be bestowed the title of king, but the great Ming dynasty's ancestral system was there. It was obviously difficult and not easy to succeed. But as the Yang faction's influence continued to expand, this thought also faded away. Could it be that if he didn't become king, he would have no power? Could it be that if the great Ming dynasty didn't recognize him, his Yang Xia wouldn't exist? He just didn't expect that a good thing like being bestowed the title of king would fall on his head when he had already given up on it. With a trace of excitement, Yang Qindong opened the imperial edict under the golden cover. Holding the imperial edict in his hand, he looked at the words one by one. After a while, Yang Qindong's voice sounded with a sigh. Bugnam of Gojoseon, he. Although there are other motives, the Daizong Emperor has indeed put in some capital this time. Presumably, the things he needs me to do won't be too small. What kind of person was Yang Qindong? How shrewd and ruthless was his vision? Just the title of Bugnam of Gojoseon made him see a lot of problems. There was no need to mention the word martial. His various actions had already proved that this word was really appropriate to use on him. The word south had some meaning. It meant that the small countries of the southern barbarian that Yang Qindong occupied were all in the south. He himself should also be in the south. As for the matters in the north, he didn't need to worry about them. Although it was just a title, the Daizong Emperor of Baiming still expressed his intention. That was, he hoped that Yang Qindong wouldn't stay in the north and would go to the south to cause trouble for the southern Ming. The sixth young master, this title was reported to the Daizong Emperor after much consideration. I think this is the only way for this title to be granted. If there is anything inappropriate, I hope that the sixth young master will forgive me. Su Yozhen lowered his head and said these words with a slightly guilty conscience. He couldn't tell if Yang Qindong really liked this title, but he didn't dare to hide the things that should be said. He also had to express the attitude that should be expressed. Feeling Su Yozhen's cautiousness, he sighed in admiration. This person was indeed worthy of being a powerful official in history. His ability to observe people's expressions and see through people's hearts was truly extraordinary. However, since he was already granted the title of king, his wish had been fulfilled. As for the title of king, he didn't really care. Could it be that if he was granted the title of Bugnam of Gojoseon, he would only be able to move about in the south? Turning his head, he folded the imperial edict and put it aside. Yang Qindong's face revealed a sincere smile. What is Minister Su saying? Being granted the title of king is enough. What is inappropriate about it? Don't think too much. Come, let me toast you with tea in place of wine. I don't dare. Su Yozhen said as he stood up. Yang Qindong had already laughed heartily and drank the tea. Then, he gestured for Su Yozhen to sit down. Minister Su, there are no outsiders here. It's just the two of us. There's no need to be so formal. I won't call you minister anymore. How about I change it to Brother Su? That's good. Su Yozhen nodded continuously. From the moment he entered this small courtyard, the initiative was completely in Yang Qindong's hands. What he needed to do was to conform to this person. Yes, Brother Su. In order to achieve this imperial edict, you must have put in a lot of effort. Tell me more about it. Yang Qindong asked with a smile on his face. He had thought of many ways to achieve this but failed. Now that Su Yozhen had done it, he wanted to reward him. Yes, sixth young master. The situation is like this. Su Yozhen knew that this was not the time to be polite. He told him about his proposal in the imperial court, as well as the discussion he had with the emperor and eunuch Qing in the back of the palace. Yang Qindong sat there and listened attentively. From time to time, he would nod and cooperate with Su Yozhen's speech. When Su Yozhen stopped talking, he laughed loudly and said, "You only gave Qing 100,000 taels of silver in exchange for the title of king?" "Yes, that's the only condition." Su Yozhen nodded, but he was shocked. He knew that Yang Qindong was rich. The goods sold by the Beyond Heavens Trading Company in the capital were all profitable. 100,000 taels of silver was not a problem for him. However, transporting food to Sanbuchuan was not an easy task. No matter how he looked at it, this person did not seem to care. Without Su Yozhen's shock at the imperial court, Yang Qindong spoke again. "All right, if it's only a small matter, this king can agree to it right now." At this moment, he considered himself to be the Bugnam of Gojoseon. After saying this, he said generously, "Brother Su has worked hard this time. Naturally, you should be rewarded. How about this, I will give you 200,000 taels of silver as a reward." This way, she could earn 200,000 taels of silver. Su Yozhen's heart was naturally overjoyed, but her face still had to put on a look of refusal. Sixth young master, you can't do this. You said that we are on the same boat, and I will be your subordinate in the future. How can you give me money like this? I have to give. If you have done well, you should be rewarded. This is my rule. All right, Brother Su, I will not refuse. If I continue to refuse, I will only think that 200,000 taels of silver is too little. All right, then thank you, sixth young master. Su Yozhen immediately stopped talking. He knew what it meant to be insatiable. He also knew that such people were the most disliked. He knew when to stop. Yes. Seeing that Su Yozhen was so tactful, Yang Qindong smiled in satisfaction. Then, his tone changed. With just this small benefit, I'm afraid it is not enough to make this a reality. I think Dai Zong still needs to give a gift. How about this, give him 5 million taels of silver. Give Dai Zong 5 million taels of silver. When he heard this, Su Yozhen's eyes widened. He didn't know what was wrong with Yang Qindong to say such a thing. Could it be that he had too much money? Even if others didn't ask for money, he still wanted to give them money. Su Yozhen had wrongly accused Yang Qindong. Yang Xia had opened up a business path. Many of the products were not available outside. He had indeed relied on this to make a lot of money. However, ever since Yang Xia was established, it was not an exaggeration to say that he spent money like water. Especially after occupying a piece of land, he needed a lot of money to build it. Many of the small countries that he occupied had not been able to fully display their usefulness. There was no way to get back the money, and they still needed Yang Xia's constant financial support. One place was like this, two places were like this. When the land was like this, Yang Xia did not have a lot of money in his hands. Although it could not be described as having too much money to make ends meet, he still needed to think carefully before casually giving out 5 million taels of silver. Even though he knew this, Yang Qindong still did it. The reason was because of what Su Yozhen said. Dai Zong had written an imperial edict, but if he wanted to announce the matter of him being crowned king, he needed to wait for Yang Qindong to resolve the crisis in Sanbulachuan city. However, would the truth really be like this? Would Dai Zong go back on his word? Right now, he didn't want to see the 200,000 Baiming soldiers fall, so he had no choice but to crown himself as king. Once the crisis was resolved, if he didn't want to, he would have 100 or even 1,000 reasons to not fulfill his promise. At that time, what would Yang Qindong do? Would he start a war with Baiming? Let's not talk about whether or not Yang Shi had such strength now. Just the fact that once the war started, it would be a kind of damage to the Han people. This was far from what Yang Qindong wanted to see. Thus, in order to prevent him from breaking his promise, he had to give Baiming 5 million taels of silver. Chapter 972. Of course, Yang Qindong also had his own thoughts on how to give out the money since they were both giving it to him. He wouldn't just give out the money. His true intention was to take advantage of the situation to Baiming the imperial court. Brother Su, has Baiming always been short of money? Yang Qindong had just said that he would give her 5 million taels of silver. Su Yozhen was also taken aback by his sudden change in tone. However, she quickly nodded her head and replied, "That's right. Ever since the Northern Ming Empire started recruiting soldiers, there has never been an abundance of silver. Because of this, the agricultural tax has been pushed forward to 3 years later, causing the commoners to complain. This method of drinking the blood of the commoners is wrong. It might succeed for a while, but it will only bring more trouble. This is not what a wise person would do." Yang Qindong said in disagreement. The previous emperors all knew that water could carry a boat, but it could also sink it. However, there were only a few who could do this. Yes, all the officials in the imperial court know this, but there is no other way. Su Yozhen also shook her head. In her heart, she thought that not everyone was as capable as the sixth young master, who had the ability to turn stone into gold. He didn't know what Su Yozhen was thinking, and he didn't have the time to think about it. Yang Qindong changed the topic again. "I remember that Baiming wanted to copy this prince's bank. That is a very profitable business, so why didn't they do it?" Sigh. When this matter was mentioned, Su Yozhen seemed to have changed into a different person. Her face was filled with anger as she said with righteous indignation, "Yes, when we saw that the Yang family's bank was so prosperous and could gather the commoners' money for use, Baiming the imperial court also wanted to copy it. This matter was even placed on the desk of the 6 ministers. But before the bank was built, the officials had already rushed in like a swarm of bees. This yamen was short of money, and that department was short of money. Just the price they quoted was an astronomical figure. If that was the case, they would take away as much money as the bank deposited. In the end, the matter came to an end." Oh, right, at that time, Baiming also wanted to take over the Yang family's bank. They didn't succeed either. Hearing that Baiming wanted to take over Yang Qindong's bank, Yang Qindong couldn't help but laugh. He had known this for a long time. Back then, he had used the name of a mercenary army to win the defense of the capital, causing some people to be wary of attacking the rat for fear of breaking the vases. Afterward, he had marched south to make his name and prestige known. Reality had proven that wealth without strength would only make one an existence that others could bully. But now, as Yang Xie continued to expand, not even Baiming dared to carelessly attack him. They could only watch as the Yang clan bank continued to expand, but there was nothing they could do about it. Seeing that Yang Qindong seemed to be in a good mood, Su Yozhen cautiously asked, "Sixth young master, you didn't give this 5 million taels of silver to Baiming to build the bank, right?" Amazing. Brother Su knows me best." Yang Qindong not only did not deny it, he even openly admitted it. "Ah! You can't do that. It's like throwing a meat bun at a dog. There's no return." Su Yozhen hurriedly waved his hands, wanting to dissuade Yang Qindong. Knowing that Su Yozhen was thinking for him, Yang Qindong put on a grateful expression and said, "I naturally understand Brother Su's thoughts. You are indeed doing this for the sake of this prince. But this prince said that this 5 million taels of silver was originally intended to be given to Baiming. It's within my expectations that it won't come back. On the contrary, using this 5 million taels of silver to mess up Baiming's economy is appropriate." Mess up the economy? Su Yozhen looked puzzled. "Yes, it's messing up the economy." Yang Qindong nodded and admitted. Since Su Yozhen came and saw the power of the first city, Yang Qindong believed that there would be no more disloyalty in the future. Therefore, Yang Qindong treated him as one of his own and did not intend to hide anything. Yes, these 5 million taels of silver are the gunpowder that will destroy the foundation of the Northern Ming dynasty. Unless they can really make good use of it, otherwise, some people will be blown to pieces. Seeing that Su Yozhen was still puzzled, Yang Qindong calmed down and continued to explain, Brother Su, let's put it this way. Do you think that the current problem of Baiming can be solved with 5 million taels of silver? No. Su Yozhen gave an answer without thinking. This was not because he was too decisive, but the fact was originally like this. Just like Yang Qindong had a dream, the acting emperor of Baiming also had his own dream, which was to unify the great Ming dynasty and restore the glory of his ancestors. If he wanted to do this, it was not something that could be solved with 5 million taels of silver. Even if 2, 5, or even 10 5 million taels of silver were given to him, he would still have a way to spend it all. Yang Qindong knew this, but he still only took out 5 million taels of silver. This was originally a trap or bait. Brother Su, to tell you the truth, Baiming's imperial court is full of corrupt officials and eunuchs monopolizing power. There is no way out and future. Such a country will perish sooner or later. It's just a matter of time. It's just a matter of how many years the Han people will have to suffer. This was the first time Yang Qindong talked about such a big matter with Su Yozhen. At this moment, he also had a serious face and quickly digested everything Yang Qindong said in his heart. Now that the world is in chaos, there are few peaceful places. The so-called rise, the people suffer, fall, the people also suffer. The reason for this is that the system is not right. It is because the officials protect each other and the officials do not care about the people's opinions. My Yang Xie's development is precisely because I saw these shortcomings. That is why I thought of a way to change everything and even wanted to build a new world. We will do our best to change what can be changed. As for what cannot be changed, we will directly destroy it and build a new foundation. Baiming is still alright and can be changed. At the very least, they have the kindest and purest people in the world. So what needs to be changed is only the imperial court. As he spoke, he paid attention to the changes in Su Yozhen's face. He found that although this person was shocked, he was not angry. Yang Qindong knew that this person should have seen through his ambition. He smiled and said, however, in order to achieve the goal of change, we need to Baiming's imperial court to make more mistakes, to the point that the people no longer support them. That is the time for me to make a move. In order to achieve this goal, this king has decided to support Baiming's establishment of a bank and invest 5 million taels of silver as the foundation. It is still the same as before. If they use it well, this will be a wealth for development. If they don't use it well, this hole will only grow bigger and bigger. In the end, even if they throw their own bodies into it, they will not be able to fill it. This is the gunpowder that will destroy Baiming's foundation. Su Yozhen finally understood and said with a face of shock. Whether it is gunpowder or not, it will depend on what the current emperor does. I have already given out the 5 million taels of silver. Whether it is a blessing or a curse, it is all up to him. Of course, on the surface, the 5 million taels of silver is not a gift, but a loan. Moreover, this money must be placed in the most conspicuous place in Baiming's bank so that everyone can see it. Why is that? Su Yozhen asked with a face of confusion. It is very simple. With the 5 million taels of silver, everyone will feel at ease and will deposit their money into Baiming's bank. This is called the butterfly effect. Yang Qindong chuckled. Then, he thought of the hole he had dug for the southern Ming Empire. That was to sell grain to them at a normal price. Over time, the southern Ming Empire's grain fields would be abandoned because they no longer had any value. At that time, if the Yang Xie suddenly stopped exporting grain to the southern Ming Empire, what would the result be? It would probably be a heavy blow to the southern Ming Empire. Northern silver and southern grain. This was the main dish that Yang Qindong had prepared for the southern Baiming. One could only imagine how terrifying the consequences would be if they were to be activated one day. Yang Qindong naturally would not tell Su Yozhen what to do about the southern Ming Empire. However, he did not hold back and told her everything about Baiming. Su Yozhen's neck was covered in cold sweat as she listened. In the end, she kept nodding her head. At noon, Su Yozhen stayed at the Yang residence for lunch. The sixth madam, Wan Xiaoyu, also came out to accompany her, expressing how much Yang Qindong valued her. In the afternoon, the people accompanying Su Shangshu were replaced by the guards. They accompanied Su Shangshu to stroll around the first city to let him relax. According to Yang Qindong, he would immediately prepare for the transportation of grain, but it would take 2 to 3 days. After all, it was the food for 200,000 people. In the afternoon, the logistics division commander, Yang Si, rushed over and listened to the young master's arrangements. The new army commander, Tiger's Mane, and Beta Persei were responsible for accompanying him. Yang Qindong continuously reported a lot of numbers, all of which were prepared to be sent to Sanbuchuan City. As the largest city in the grassland, the first city naturally prepared a lot of necessities like grain. It was just a month and a half's worth of grain for 200,000 people, so it was not a big problem. After Yang Qindong finished giving out the orders one by one, Yang Si naturally nodded his head continuously, indicating that he would do it as soon as he went back. He would try to prepare everything in the shortest time possible and send it to Sanbuchuan City on the carriage. When Commander Tiger's Mane saw that they were going to transport grain to Baiming, he immediately expressed a different opinion. Young master, you said that we will have a battle with Baiming and Southern Ming Empire sooner or later. Why are we sending them grain now? Isn't this helping our opponents and helping them become stronger? Well, a battle is inevitable, but how big the scale of this battle is can be carefully considered. Let's put it this way. If we do it well, the scale of this battle may be very small, so small that it can be ignored. On the contrary, if the preparation is not done well, the scale of this battle will be very big. Even if we win, Southern Ming Baiming will not be able to recover. If that's the case, after we move there, we will need to spend more energy to help them develop. In contrast, we are just transporting some grain now. It's nothing compared to what we will have to pay in the future. The three people in front of him were very close to him, so he naturally told them everything without hiding anything. Chapter 973. Beta Persei and Yang Si just nodded without saying a word. In their eyes, any decision made by the young master was the right one. All they had to do was to obey. Tiger's Mane didn't nod immediately. Instead, after thinking for a while, he suddenly looked up and said with a surprised expression, "Young master, are you planning to peacefully recover the north and south of the Great Ming dynasty? It's impossible to achieve complete peace. We still have to fight a war, and the best way is to talk while fighting. Of course, it's too early to say this. The Great Ming dynasty's foundation is still there, and it's far from being solved in a short period of time. A starving camel is still bigger than a horse, and we still have too much work to do." Yang Qindong looked up at the sky and said with a sigh. "Hee, young master, you don't have to be so melancholic. As long as you want to do something, there's nothing you can't do. Besides, our 5-star army has given the Han people so good and generous. One day, they will all be loyal to us. At that time, maybe the Great Ming dynasty will really be defeated without a fight." Beta Persei saw that the young master's mood seemed a little heavy, so he quickly interjected. This finally attracted Yang Qindong's smile. "Not bad, Beta Persei is getting better at talking. Hee, it's all thanks to young master's good teaching, good teaching." Beta Persei scratched his head and showed a silly expression. "Okay, don't flatter me here, go and prepare." Yang Qindong smiled and waved his hand. Tiger's Mane, Beta Persei, and Yang Si all turned around and left. When Tiger's man left, he was both excited and worried. When he returned to the barracks, he went straight to the deputy commander's office. As soon as he entered the room, he told him about the young master's plan to send provisions to Baiming's army in Sanbuchuan. Is the 6th young master going to make a move? When Shirbei heard this, his eyes revealed a slightly shocked expression. Wait a minute, it's just a delivery of provisions. They didn't say that they were going to start a war. Tiger's mane's expression turned serious when he heard this. Shibi shook his head and said, "We're already planning to send food to Senbutchuan. Why would the War of Wara agree? When the time comes, one of them will send food while the other won't. Do you think we should fight?" This. But young master didn't say anything. Tiger's mane shook his head and said uncertainly. The sixth young master didn't say anything. He probably has his own ideas, but it's not mature yet, so there's no need to tell us. But as the leaders of the new army, we have to be prepared in advance. How about this, we'll immediately call the staff officers over for a meeting and see what preparations we have to make once the war starts. Shibi also shook his head. Facts had proven that Yang Qindong's thoughts were not something they could guess, but it was always right to do some work in advance. Yang Qindong really didn't make a final decision to fight. If it was just sending provisions and not fighting with the War of Wara, of course, it would be the best choice, and he was willing to put in some effort for this choice. After all, the War of Wara had hundreds of thousands of cavalry in front of them. It wasn't easy to fight them, not to mention that the Ili army was moving towards Senbutchuan. They were also an existence that couldn't be ignored. In line with the principle of not fighting, Yang Qindong personally wrote a letter to the head of the reconnaissance team, Ding Shan, and sent it to the Tile camp. In the Wallace camp under Senbutchuan, Ding Shan, who was wearing a military green uniform and a colonel rank, rode alone outside the Wallace camp. He reported his name and said that he wanted to see the leader of the Walla, Yeshen. The 5-star army sent a representative, which was originally within Yeshen's expectations. His influence was not far from the first city, but Yang Qindong still didn't respond at all. Instead, he began to worry. Now that the other party finally sent someone, he immediately ordered his subordinate, General Ting Shu, to go out of the camp and personally bring the person back to the camp. In the main tent, the spirited Ding Shan saw Yi Xian, who sat on a tiger pelt and exuded the air of a ruler, exuding a dignified air. Ding Shan, the leader of the 5-star army's reconnaissance team, greets leader Yeshen. Ding Shan's gaze first scanned the main tent and found that there were more than a dozen grassland boers dressed in strange clothes. All of them were tall and had fierce gazes, but he didn't show the slightest fear. Instead, he bowed to Yeshen with a calm expression. "Oh, you're a leader. As far as I know, with your status, you can be considered a top figure in the 5-star army." Yeshen looked at Ding Shan as if he could see through people's hearts. The other party was very young and had a lot of bearing, which made him unhappy. In his opinion, after entering his tent, the other party's legs should be weak and his whole body should be trembling. "I'm not a big figure, I'm just a little more courageous," Ding Shan said, degrading himself. "Yes, you're quite courageous. You dare to come to my camp alone. Aren't you afraid of death?" "That's right, don't talk about not killing envoys in a war. Not long ago, you guys dug out the nose of an envoy from the Ili brigade. That did happen, right?" The more he looked at Ding Shan's fearless appearance, the angrier Yeshen became. He wanted to scare the other party and let them understand that being arrogant in front of him wouldn't end well. "That's right." Ding Shan didn't avoid the topic. Instead, he nodded seriously and admitted, "That did happen. That envoy's name was Hikagan. Because he spoke rudely, his nose was dug out. But I didn't speak rudely to leader Yeshen, right? It's not up to you to decide if he's being rude or not. Right now, it's up to me to decide. Men, drag him away and dig his nose out." He waved his hand, as if saying, "I'm being unreasonable, I'm being rude and unreasonable, so what can you do about it?" After the order was given, General Ting Shu stood up and walked towards Ding Shan with large strides. "Don't move." Ding Shan yelled as he stretched out his right hand and made a strangling gesture towards his neck. "If any one of you dares to come near, I'll die in front of you. Don't move." Yeshen was shocked by this sudden scene. Then, he slowly leaned against the back of the chair as if he was adjusting his emotions. After a while, he asked, "Are you really not afraid of death?" "Everyone is afraid of death." But I'd rather commit suicide than fall into your hands. Ding Shan's voice was loud and clear. He didn't have the slightest intention of lowering his head just because he was in a weaker position. The soldiers of the 5-star army can't be humiliated by anyone. The loud voice reverberated in the air above the main tent and didn't disappear for a long time. Yes Hen, who was sitting at the head of the table, had an ugly expression on his face. Just now, he only wanted to scare Ding Shan a little, and take control of the initiative. In truth, he didn't want to offend the war god for a small regiment commander that he had never heard of. No matter what other people said about Yang Qindong, whether it was the war god, the Duke of Loyalty and Courage, or even the title of Heavenly Khan, in Yeshen's eyes, Yang Qindong was still the war god who had stopped him from entering Baiming's capital. He would never forget the scene when the other party looked at him from afar and fired the cannons. This was a demon-like existence. At that time, Yes Hen was afraid and retreated. After so many years, he originally thought that the young Yang Qindong, who was shining brightly, would fade into the crowd under the great Ming dynasty's system. After all, he was too young and too powerful, which didn't conform to the Han's doctrine of the mean. However, everything had developed beyond his expectations. After not seeing him for 6 years, the other party had already grown into someone who could face him head-on. Furthermore, the power he controlled wasn't weaker than his own. In fact, it was even stronger. Fine, even if he couldn't do anything to the war god, he could at least find some sense of victory by bullying the people under him. Who would have thought that the regiment commander who came would be so stubborn and would threaten him with death? This time, he had lifted a rock and smashed it on his own foot. He was in a dilemma. His gaze landed on Ding Shan's face and he carefully scrutinized it. After confirming that the other party did not have any intention of joking with him, he waved his hand at Ting Shu with a stern face and told him to return to his original position. After doing all this, he looked at Ding Shan and said very seriously, "Speak, why did the war god ask you to come find me?" Ding Shan's right hand didn't move away from his neck. Instead, his left hand reached into his chest and took out a letter. With a flick of his wrist, the letter flew to the desk in front of Yes Hen. "This is a letter from our 6th young master to you. Read it and you'll understand." Reaching out to take the letter, he opened it and slowly read it. Yeshen's expression became somewhat ugly. The moment he put down the letter, he looked at Ding Shan and said angrily, "The war god wants to send food to the Baiming army that I've surrounded?" "Yes." Ding Shan nodded heavily and said, "The 6th young master doesn't want to become enemies with the Walla, so he notified you in advance. As for whether to fight or to make peace, that's up to you. Now that the letter has been delivered, if leader Yes Hen doesn't object, this regiment commander will return to report to the 6th young master. We can't let him leave, this is simply a provocation to us." 2 other generals in the main tent stood up, their faces full of anger and murderous intent. They were one of the 4 generals that Yes Hen relied on, He Lei and Mu Tua. Over the years, the War of Wara had gradually become stronger under the leadership of Yes Hen, and many outstanding generals had emerged. Among them, Bo Mu, Ting Shu, He Lei, and Mu Tua had the best performance. They were also known as Yeshen's 4 generals. This time there were 3 in the main tent, except for Bo Mu, who was stationed in the chaotic Well City in the He-Tao region. Now all 3 of them stood up and said that they couldn't let Ding Shan leave. This person was simply here to issue a letter of challenge. If they let him leave, where would the War of Wara's face go? Facing the shouts of the 3 generals, Ding Shan's expression didn't change and his heart didn't skip a beat. When he received the mission this time, he was determined to die. Would a person who was even prepared to die be afraid of being threatened in front of him? Chapter 974. Alright, let him go. Yes Hen wasn't prepared to fight with Yang Qindong. Even if he wanted to fight, killing one of the enemy's commanders wouldn't boost his morale. It would only make the 5-star army hate him even more. He wouldn't do such a thankless job. Ding Shan left. When he left, he swaggered. Ting Shu and the other two generals were furious. They looked at Yes Hen and asked unhappily, "Leader, what's so scary about the 5-star army?" They actually wanted to send food to Baiming's surrounded soldiers. They are clearly our enemies. What do you know? The 5-star army has cannons. They have powerful cannons. Unless we can kill them in one shot, any blind move is just asking for trouble. Yes Hen recalled the scene from that night. A trace of fear appeared in his heart. So what if they have cannons? The Baiming army also has cannons, but they were still defeated by us. General Teng Shu said proudly. That's not the same. Yes Hen shook his head. In his heart, Baiming's cannons were too weak. Their attack range was also very limited. It wasn't like that night. He couldn't even see where the cannons were before he was defeated. Yes Hen thought highly of the 5-star army. Another general, He Lei, said unhappily, "Leader, are we just going to watch the 5-star army send food to Baiming's army? If that's the case, we will have to pay an even higher price to take down Senbuchuan. Then what should we do? Do we have to fight against Baiming and the 5-star army at the same time? Let me ask you, if that is the case, what are your chances of winning?" He had also been angered by the questions of the other generals, so he roared back. This. Ting Shu and the others didn't say anything. They were nothing more than martial artists. If one were to look at them from a higher perspective, they were just fierce generals. When it came to scheming, they were far from it. Because of this, even though they were all capable of fighting, they still became Yeshin's subordinates. The three generals didn't say anything. Yes Hen waved his hand in annoyance. "All right, you guys can leave first. Let me think about it." The situation of the battle kept changing. Yeshin's mind was in a mess. First, the stubborn resistance of the Northern Ming Imperial Edict Army exceeded his expectations. He used the 100 cannons he had seized and forcefully blasted a huge hole in the western city gate of Sanbulachuan. Then, the armored cavalry seized the opportunity to charge in. But even so, the stubborn Northern Ming soldiers still managed to block the hole and drive back the cavalry he had sent out. The Northern Ming army's fighting strength was tyrannical, and their willpower was tenacious, far surpassing what he had previously thought. Just based on this point, he could conclude that the commander of Baiming in Senbuchuan was definitely not an ordinary person. This also added a lot of resistance to his original plan. When he couldn't attack the city, a second accident occurred. The 5-star army actually wanted to interfere and send food to the Baiming army. This was to completely cut off his path to attack the city. He was furious, but he couldn't do anything about it. He had long heard of the strength of the 5-star army. He didn't have the confidence to win against them in a one-on-one battle, not to mention that he might have to face the combined forces of the 5-star army and Baiming army. If that was the case, he would lose without a doubt. Forget it. It's never too late for a gentleman to take revenge. So what if they send food to the Baiming army? In the end, Senbuchuan is still surrounded by me. When the Baiming army appears, perhaps there will be a turn for the better. Yes Hen suppressed his urge to attack and finally decided to take a step back and observe the situation before making a decision. Yeshin's achievements today were all due to his personality. He was the kind of person who could adapt to circumstances. When he had the advantage, he would show his ruthless side. Just like when Tuachuo Buhua was defeated by Yang Qindong, he saw the opportunity and took a bite. In the end, he ended Tuachuo Buhua's life. On the other hand, when the situation was not good, he was very good at holding his breath. He was like a vicious wolf that lay dormant, only waiting for the right opportunity to suddenly jump up and take a fierce bite. Now, it was time for him to swallow his anger. After Ding Shan returned from delivering the letter, he went to see Yang Qindong in the beginning city and told him everything that happened when he entered the main tent of the Wara army. Yang Qindong listened attentively from the side. After Ding Shan finished speaking, he was not stingy with his praise. Then he ordered that the food could be sent. There was no news from Yeshen, so Yang Qindong decided to send the food. The commander of the new army, Tiger's Mane, was puzzled. "Young master, don't we need to wait for a reply?" "No need. Commander Ding Shan being able to come back safe and sound is enough to explain the problem." Yang Qindong chuckled. If Yeshen did not agree to the 5-star army's move, it would be difficult for Ding Shan to come back. On the other hand, it proved that the other party had misgivings, so he should take advantage of this time to send the food over. What was he waiting for? He did not forget that in a few days, the Ili army would arrive on the battlefield. At that time, the situation of the entire battlefield would change dramatically. Before that, the matter of transporting the food had to be done properly. Otherwise, it would be difficult to find another opportunity. Yang Qindong ordered, and 100 carriages were driven out from the logistics division. The Tatar division commander, Su He, personally led a division of men to escort them. This way, even if they encountered any accidents, they would not suffer any losses. Su Yozhen personally watched as the food was loaded onto the carriages. With these things, the nearly 200,000 soldiers in Baiming Sambulachuan city could eat for 2 months. At that time, the army led by Governor Shi Heng would arrive and the danger of Sambulachuan city would be resolved. Yang Qindong stood beside Su Yozhen. Not far away, there were a few officials from Baiming's Ministry of Revenue watching. All of this had to be recorded. When they returned, they had to report to the Baiming Imperial Court and report the details of the process. "Don't worry, there won't be any problems with the food, and no one will stop them. I have arranged for a division of cavalry to escort them. If there is a problem, more troops will quickly arrive. As long as Yeshen does not want to start a full-scale war, he will not stop them. But Brother Su, you can prepare to leave here and return to the capital to report," Yang Qindong said as he patted Su Yozhen's shoulder as he watched the carriages of food being transported out of the first city. "Okay, 6th young master, don't worry. I will go and make preparations. However, I still need Shi Wanshan to issue a receipt for the delivery of the food. When the time comes, I will arrange for officials from the Ministry of Revenue to accompany them. I hope that 6th young master can make things easy for me." Su Yozhen nodded. He knew that he had a more important task to do. After returning to Baiming, there was still a big hole to be dug for Emperor Daizong. In comparison, the matter at hand was a small matter. "This is not a problem. But I have to remind Brother Su of one thing. After returning to the capital, when Emperor Daizong personally issues an imperial edict regarding my Bugnam of Gojoseon, when can the 5 million taels of silver be withdrawn from the Baiming capital's Yang family bank?" Yang Qindong nodded and smiled. "6th young master, don't worry. I know what to do." Su Yozhen was very clear about his identity, especially after seeing the prosperity and power of the first city. This time, he was completely on Yang Xie's ship. The food supplies left the first city, passed through Saihan Mountain, and reached Sambuchuan city very smoothly. Although they would occasionally discover Wallace scouts in the distance, everything was as Yang Qindong had said. Yeshen did not make up his mind to act. In the end, all the food supplies were delivered to Sambuchuan city. The Xian Mansion's chief soldier, Shi Wanshan, personally came out of the city to welcome them. After the inspection, he issued a receipt to the officials from the Ministry of Revenue. Su Yozhen left. He came with a mission and left with an even more important task. At the same time, Ili led the Li Kingdom's army to the Shaojing region. They arrived at Sambuchuan city and met up with Yeshen's army of 150,000. Apu's arrival made Yeshen very happy. At the very least, he now had the advantage in terms of military strength. Thus, while he assigned the Li Kingdom's army a place to stay, he invited Apu to his tent to discuss the matter of attacking Sambuchuan city together. "Ha, Lord Prime Minister, you're finally here. What do you think? Let's do something big together. Right now, Sambuchuan city is surrounded by my cavalry. It's so tight that not even a drop of water can get through. Yes-Hen still wanted to say something. A single sentence from Arab was enough to turn him into a mute. So tight that not even a drop of water can trickle through. If that's the case, what's up with the 1,000 carriages of food that the 5-star army sent into the city? This. Yes-Hen was at a loss for words. He did not know how to answer. Apu did not wait for Yes-Hen to think. He said, Lord Prime Minister just said that if we work together, we can do something big. I think that's a good idea. Since that's the case, let's discuss how to deal with the 5-star army. Okay. Deal with the 5-star army. Yes-Hen nodded. Then, he looked at Apu with a confused expression. Lord Prime Minister, you didn't hear wrong. We're going to deal with the 5-star army, Apu said confidently. Then, he strode to the map and pointed at it. Lord Prime Minister just said that Sanbutuan City is now heavily surrounded. They have just been defeated and only have the strength to defend the city. They don't have the intention to fight outside the city. Since they're all cities, why don't we attack Shur City? That place is the #1 city in the Central Plains. There are countless resources and hundreds of thousands of slaves. If we can capture that place, I think we will get many times more than what we would get from taking down Sanbutuan. Attack Shur City, but the 5-star army is in charge of defending it. There were also some people who hadn't understood the situation yet. So what if they're defending it? I've already sent people to investigate. The 5-star army only has less than 40,000 people. Compared to Wara's 150,000 cavalry and Arili's 170,000 infantry, 40,000 against 320,000. I'm sure everyone knows who's going to win, Apu said confidently. Chapter 975. This was the decision he had made along the way, which was to take down the first city and inflict heavy losses on the 5-star army. If possible, capturing the Heavenly Khan alive would be the best thing to do. And he made such a decision not only because the Ili army suffered a loss at the hands of the 5-star army, but more importantly, he valued the value of the first city and the benefits he could obtain by taking it down. A true politician would never act on loyalty. Just like how Alip would not retaliate just because Kunsa lost to the 5-star army. If it were not for the abundant resources and slaves in Origin City, he would have endured the humiliation. But since he could vent his anger and obtain even more benefits, why not? Faced with Alip's bold idea, Yeshin's desire was also aroused at this moment. He had to admit that he was afraid of the 5-star army, but he was full of yearning for the first city that had already been built and played its role. If possible, if he had to choose between Sanbutuan City and the first city, he would not even hesitate and directly choose to attack the first city. But is this really going to work? Yes-Hen did not answer immediately, and his eyes kept turning. Seeing this, Alip laughed and said, Leader, I know what you are worried about. The 5-star army is indeed very powerful, but because of this, it is full of threats to us. If we can't defeat them with the advantage of a powerful force, then it will be even more difficult to defeat them in the future. And as long as we can take down Yang Qindong this time, there will be no one in the grassland who can threaten us. Tuachuo Hua Khan is already dead, and the Heavenly Khan is also dead. Let me ask you, who will be your opponent, Yes-Hen? At that time, you will be the leader of the grassland. As your friend, we don't have any ambitions. We just want to snatch some silver and slaves back to the country to make the people's lives better. The Han people have a saying, if you don't look out for yourself, the heavens will destroy you. Since that's the case, why are you still hesitating? Take advantage of the fact that you just sold him a favor, invite Yang Qindong out and kill him. At that time, there will be no more demons in your heart, and you will become the one and only Heavenly Khan here. Apu's ability to bewitch people was very powerful. With just a few words, Yeshin's impetuous heart was moved. His face even turned a bit red. Clearly, the benefits of victory had deeply stimulated his heart. After a while, Yeshin's expression gradually returned to normal. Then, he began to think about what kind of practical problems he would face if he did this. Prime Minister, our military strength naturally has an advantage against the first city. However, once Baiming intervenes, they have nearly 200,000 troops and will still pose a threat to us. Please rest assured, Chief. On the way here, I have already sent someone to the capital of Baiming to deliver a letter and discuss this matter with their emperor. I believe that there will be news soon. At that time, this doubt will not be a problem. Perhaps the emperor of Baiming also wants to kill this loyal duke of the Great Ming that he can't control. Apu's face was full of confidence. Then we will follow the plan step by step. When the emperor of Baiming sends news, we will take action. Yes Hen finally made up his mind. Although Yang Qindong had left him with too many shadows, now that their military strength was 8 times that of the enemy, what was there to fear? Good, then let's discuss the next plan. Seeing that Yes Hen had finally made up his mind, Apu could not help but laugh with satisfaction. Baiming capital. The imperial envoy, Su Yozhen, had yet to return. In the rear hall of the imperial palace, Chief Eunuch Jining had rushed to Zhu Qiyu's chambers with an anxious expression. What has caused you to be in such a panic? Zhu Qiyu walked out of the chambers of a recently concubine, his face filled with displeasure. He had originally wanted to spend some time with his beloved concubine, but now he had been disturbed. Presumably, no one would be happy. At this moment, Jining did not realize that he had disturbed a good time. On the contrary, he looked left and right. After confirming that there was no one else around, he softly said, "Reporting to your majesty, our embroidered uniform guard has captured a foreign spy in the city." What? Zhu Qiyu's expression instantly turned ugly. The embroidered uniform guard has captured a spy and is about to report to us. Do you all have nothing better to do? No. Knowing that he had misspoken, Jining hurriedly corrected himself. Your Majesty, this is no ordinary spy. This is a messenger sent by the Baiming Kingdom of Baiming. That person voluntarily allowed the embroidered uniform guard to discover him. He even brought a letter with him. Oh, here it is. Jining carefully took out a letter from his bosom and respectfully presented it to Zhu Qiyu. However, after a short while, Zhu Qiyu's expression had become very grave after reading the letter. As if afraid that he had misunderstood, he picked up the letter and carefully read it again. Then, he looked up at the sky and did not speak for a long time. Jining, who had already read the letter, naturally knew the significance it represented. Seeing that the emperor had not spoken for a long time, he asked tentatively, Your Majesty, how do you think we should reply? Who has read this letter? Zhu Qiyu did not answer the question directly. Only this official has read it. The other embroidered uniform guard brothers are not of high enough rank, Jining replied in a very certain tone. Us understands. Just pretend that us have not seen this letter. You can arrange for the messenger to leave as soon as possible. Zhu Qiyu suddenly said this without rhyme or reason. Then, he turned and walked toward the back of the palace. However, the direction was not the imperial concubine's palace, but the Qingjing Hall. Obviously, Zhu Qiyu's heart was not calm at this time. At this moment, he was no longer in the mood to talk about feelings with anyone. Looking at the emperor's back, Jining nodded in understanding. He already knew what the emperor meant. That was, he had agreed to the request of the Ili army's messenger to join forces to deal with Yang Qindong. However, Zhu Qiyu had just wanted to make Yang Qindong the Bugnam of Gojoseon. It was really not good for him to go back on his word now. Therefore, he pretended not to know anything and left it to him, the chief eunuch, to handle. The 3 sides secretly joined forces. There were all kinds of schemes and betrayals among them. However, Yang Qindong, who was in the first city, was completely unaware of all this. He was only wondering why the Ili army suddenly did not move after they appeared. They did not intend to join forces with the Wara army to attack Sanbuchuan city, nor did they intend to send troops to deal with him. As the saying goes, when things are abnormal, there must be a demon. This kind of sudden quiet situation gave Yang Qindong a very bad feeling. He did not like the feeling of not being able to control the situation. Worried, he increased the frequency of the scouts' activities in the Shajing area. However, it was a pity that there was still no useful information coming back. The news said that the armies of the Wara army and the Ili army were seizing the time to conduct siege training. It seemed that they were preparing to take down Sanbuchuan city in one fell swoop. They have more than 300,000 people. Sanbuchuan city is just an isolated city. There are less than 200,000 defenders in the city. Most of them are new recruits who have just entered the battlefield. How can they be so careful? Looking at the military intelligence in front of him, Yang Qindong could only shake his head to express that he did not understand. He still did not understand. It was now the end of July. In more than 2 months, there would be heavy snow on the grasslands. At that time, whether it was outdoor warfare or logistics, it would be much more difficult. It was impossible for everyone not to understand this reasoning, but why were they not in a hurry? Just what were they waiting for? Reporting. Just as Yang Qindong was feeling puzzled, the voice of the first guard Captain Chiu V came from outside the courtyard. Soon after, he appeared in front of Yang Qindong with a secret report in hand, handing over a telegram that had just been sent to Yang Qindong. Holding the telegram in his hand, Yang Qindong only glanced at it before suddenly standing up from his chair. His voice carried a trace of confusion as he asked, "The telegram says that Baiming's commander-in-chief Shi Heng led 200,000 reinforcements out of Jiong Pass and suddenly began to slow down. Is this news true or false? When did it happen? Immediately send Wang Shan to investigate." The news had been sent by a secret agent of the security bureau hidden near Jiong Pass. They had seen that Baiming's reinforcements had suddenly slowed down, almost stopping every now and then. Considering that Baiming was waiting for reinforcements on the front lines, this situation was very abnormal, so they had sent a telegram to inform the higher-ups. Originally, not long after the war began, Tulu city had been sealed off. Under the policy of not allowing anyone to leave or enter, no one had thought that the news would leak out, and no one had figured out what a telegram was. But no matter what, Yang Qindong still saw the telegram and understood the movements of Baiming's reinforcements. When he thought about how so much time had passed and how the allied forces of Wala and Ili had not attacked Sanbuchuan, instead, the scouts had sent news that they were constantly practicing the combination of cavalry and infantry when attacking the city. For a moment, Yang Qindong could not help but wonder if their target this time was not Sanbuchuan, but himself. This bold thought was just a fleeting thought, but it was accurately caught by Yang Qindong. What followed was a burst of shock and anger. Could it be that this bold thought was true? If this was the case, it was not impossible. After all, no matter how he looked at it, the benefits of taking down Shi City were far better than taking down Sanbuchuan. If all of this was true, then it proved that Wala, Ili, and Baiming had joined forces. Someone, go and invite Tiger's Mane, Shibi, Yang Si, and City Lord Yu Mian over. For such a big matter, even Yang Qindong could not make the right decision with just a telegram. He had to discuss it with others. Chapter 976. Not long after, the 4 of them were called to the Yang residence. In the small courtyard with the battle command sign, Yang Qindong told them about his worries. The 3 of them were so shocked that their faces tightened. It was obvious that the 4 of them did not believe the news when they first heard it. However, no one could be sure about politics. It was common for friends to be enemies the next day. When the benefits could sway people's hearts, anything could happen. We've just sent so much rations to Northern Ming, and now they're coming back to do us harm. This is too much of a beast. City Lord Yu Mian was so angry that his beard was trembling. It was obvious that he was angered by Baiming's shamelessness. Tiger's Mane was not any better. He punched the sand table. As expected, we can't be too kind. We were willing to take the risk to help Baiming, but how did they treat us? Even if those things were given to a dog, it would at least wag its tail at us. Sometimes, humans are worse than animals. Shi Bi, who was known as a wise man, said angrily. This person, who Yang Qindong said was calm in the face of danger, had a big picture, and was a strategist, could not help but show an angry expression. Young master, just tell us what to do. Yang Si was even more direct. He was waiting for orders angrily. Yang Qindong was also angry, but he was more realistic. He knew that being angry wouldn't solve all the problems. What he needed to do now was to solve the difficulties in front of him and make more preparations before the war began. He shouldn't be cursing and scolding here and there. There was no practical meaning to it. Alright, everyone calm down. When it comes to anger, I am angrier than any of you. Now, let's talk about what we need to prepare. Yu Mian, you go first. Yes. Suppressing his anger, Yu Mian quickly got into character and said, when the origin city was first built, we had already considered the possibility of being surrounded one day, so we had already made preparations. The outer city wall is 150 feet tall and sturdy. It's definitely the type that's easy to defend and difficult to attack. Even if the outer city wall is breached, the moat between the inner city wall and the outer city wall is enough to withstand thousands of soldiers and horses. Moreover, the army has prepared enough food and fodder. There is no need to be afraid of being surrounded, and the possibility of being breached is even lower. However, there is no way to take care of the grain fields outside the city. We will be able to harvest in 2 months. If we fight to defend the city, I am afraid that we will suffer great losses in this aspect. Young master, can't we take the initiative to kill our way out? Didn't you always say that the best way to avoid losses is to set the battlefield in the enemy's territory? This time, can we? Tiger's Mane's face turned red when he heard that the hundreds of thousands of acres of crops waiting to be harvested might be destroyed. The food in the city depended on this land for the coming year. There were also many people who relied on farming for a living. They were also waiting for the moment of harvest. If it was destroyed like this, it would be heartbreaking. No. Yang Qindong answered in a resolute and decisive manner. This time, just the combined forces of Walla and Ili Ali alone are as many as 300,000 soldiers, which is more than 8 times the strength of our regular army. If we still choose to fight them head-on, even if we have to wear them down, they will wear us down. Whether it is Yes Hen or a Lip, they are not ordinary people. They are both experts in using troops. It will be too difficult to turn the tables in such a disadvantageous situation. Only by defending can we show our advantage. Moreover, this time, we don't know the situation of Baiming. If they also join in this war, then we will have to face more than 10 times the enemy, hehe. Yang Qindong did not continue speaking, but the anger flashing in the corner of his eyes showed his mood at the moment. From the time he established Yang Xie's forces until now, this was the first time Yang Qindong faced such a dilemma. In the past, although there were people who had ideas about him, the difference in strength between the two sides was not too big. As long as he found the right path and the right opportunity, he could fight. But this time, in the face of more than 8 times the military strength, unless Yang Qindong used guns and cannons, it would be very difficult to turn the situation around with just the collision of cold weapons. Unfortunately, Yang Qindong did not have a cold front by his side. The closest was the Haiwu division in North Korea, but it would take at least 20 days to reach the first city from there. If there was a Baiming army obstruction along the way, it would take even longer. Distant water can't quench a present thirst. It would not work to put hope on them. Moreover, even if it was the C's 5th Division that came, they would not be able to defeat an enemy of more than 300,000 cavalry soldiers in a single blow. Of course, Yang Qindong had a large warehouse with him. If he wanted, he could take out a lot of firearms, but how many people would use them? And how could such a thing be explained? If only 1 or 2 weapons were taken out, it could be said that they were prepared in advance. However, it was impossible not to arouse suspicion when tens of thousands of guns or even more were taken out. It could only be said that things had not reached an irreversible situation, and Yang Qindong did not need to take the risk. Without enough firearms, Yang Qindong could only hope to defend the city. Looking at the four people in front of him, Yang Qindong actually had a smile on his face. Everyone, if a city wants to mature, it must experience a lot of things. It's time to test the first city. As long as we unite, there is no difficulty that we can't overcome, and there is no hurdle that we can't cross. We have to use facts to tell everyone that the defense line of the first city is strong. I'll leave the rest to you. Young master, tell us what to do. Tiger's mane patted his chest and said loudly. Sixth young master, give the order. Yu Mian, Shi Bi, and Yang Si also expressed their opinions in unison. Okay, I'll give the order next. You can supplement it at any time. Yang Qindong's eyes also revealed a very determined gaze. Order, the army guarding Saihan Mountain to immediately withdraw to the city. Order the world's 1st Cavalry Division and the Tatar Division to guard the road out of the city to the northwest to strictly prevent anyone from threatening the safety of North Desert City and other places. Order to immediately start a recruitment operation in the city, mainly the soldiers in the Logistics Division. Strive to build a regular army in a short period of time. I don't want to see my soldiers rush onto the battlefield and die innocently because their military quality is not good enough. Order the city to be under martial law immediately and use a method of relaxation on the outside. Anyone who enters the city is not allowed to leave without a special pass. Order the city to bury more mines beside the grain fields outside the city. If we choose not to take that grain field, then no enemy will be able to take it away. As for the people who grow the grain, they will be handed over to City Lord Yu. You will be responsible for telling them that we will compensate them no matter how much they lose, and there must not be any internal strife. Telegram the city to order the C-5th Division in North Korea to immediately reinforce the city. Orders were issued from Yang Qindong's mouth. The four of them kept nodding their heads in agreement. Regardless of the time, the four of them would immediately supplement if they thought of something. A preparation work for the defense of the city was in full swing. Considering that there must be a lot of enemy spies in the city, the four outer cities did not seem to have any changes. However, at the city gate of the inner city, everyone had already stopped going out of the city. In this way, they could also buy some time to prepare for the defense of the first city. 3 days after the meeting, the world's 1st Cavalry Division and the Tatar Division left the city. No one knew where they went. They disappeared into the vast grassland as soon as they left the city. 4 days later, a large number of mines and other things were transported out of the city. The new army's recruit division and the soldiers of the 1st Cavalry Division went out late and returned early every day. They prepared one trap after another outside the hundreds of thousands of acres of grain field, waiting for the enemy to appear and scatter the flowers. 7 days later, the Wara army and the Ili army finally moved. They suddenly gave up besieging Sambasachuan city and moved towards the first city. This move was a joint decision made by Yeshen and Alip. Just a day ago, they suddenly discovered that the spies they sent into the first city to gather information had not returned. This gave the two of them a very bad feeling. Although the spies could still continuously send back information with the help of gerfalcons, indicating that there was nothing unusual on the surface, the two of them were not so easy to fool. As soon as there was an accident, they thought of the same question. Did Yang Qindong already see through their battle plan? Where the problem was and how their intentions would be seen through, the two of them did not have the time to think about it. Since there was a danger of being discovered, they should take the initiative to attack. After all, the advantage was in their hands. The enemy at the 4 city gates suddenly withdrew. This made the Xian Mansion's chief soldier Shi Wanshan, who had been nervous, puzzled. During this period of time, his days were not easy at all. Although the soldiers at the city gates had not launched an attack, the nerves in his mind had been tense. He really did not know when the enemy would suddenly launch an attack. Every night, he would think about whether the enemy would launch an attack on the city the next morning. Would he be able to defend the city? That kind of day was more than just torture. However, no one would have thought that the enemy would withdraw from the city gates. At this moment, he actually had a surreal feeling. Deputy Chief Soldier Ancient River, Ning Wenfeng, and the army supervisor eunuch Deng Chang appeared on the city gate tower together. Seeing the enemy disappear from under their eyes, they were all at a loss. Everything that was happening in front of them also made them feel a sense of bewilderment. What do you think they are doing? Holding the battlements, Shi Wanshan seemed to be asking the others, but also seemed to be talking to himself. They are not pretending to retreat in order to lure us out of the city, right? Deputy Chief Soldier Ancient River's personality was straightforward and his words were more direct. Chapter 977. The supervising eunuch, Deng Chang, was in a better state. He looked in the direction of the enemy's retreat and said worriedly, "They are heading in the direction of Talis City. Are they going to abandon us and choose another path?" "I don't think so." Deputy Chief Ancient River's face was filled with shock. He shook his head hesitantly. "I don't think so. If they don't attack us and go to attack Talis City, they will face the danger of being attacked from both sides at any time. Moreover, didn't the imperial court send news? Governor Shiheng is leading an army of 200,000. If they go to Talis City, they should be able to meet them. At that time, we will attack them from both sides. They won't be able to gain any benefits." Ning Wenfeng, who had been silent all this time, finally spoke. He denied Deng Chang's worries. "Then why are they going there? If they are retreating, shouldn't they retreat to the south? Could it be that they are really trying to lure us out of the city?" Deng Chang nodded in agreement. However, a new doubt rose in his mind. To the north, there is not only Talis City but also Beginning City. Ning Wenfeng's expression changed slightly. When he said the last two words, his face had already turned red. Although his possibility was the lowest, it seemed that this was the only plausible explanation. Ning Wenfeng's words attracted the attention of the three people. It was Ancient River who said, "Impossible. You said that they want to attack Beginning City. They must be crazy. The Duke of Loyalty is there. Moreover, Beginning City has high walls. How can it be so easy to attack?" "That's right." Chief Shi Wanshan spoke again, "Moreover, we are still behind them. If they attack Beginning City now, aren't they afraid that we will stab them in the ass and cut off their retreat?" A while ago, Yang Qindong sent people to deliver provisions into the city. Although it wasn't because of Shi Wanshan's face, and if he guessed correctly, it should be because of some agreement between the Duke of Loyalty and the Emperor. However, there was one point that couldn't be denied, and that was that nearly 200,000 of their soldiers had been saved. He had to acknowledge this favor. If Walla and Commander Ely really wanted to attack Beginning City, he could also lead the army to cut off the enemy's retreat and severely injure them. "That's right. The 5-star army has helped us a lot this time. If something happens to them, we can't just ignore it." Ancient River nodded silently. It was said that the more straightforward a person's personality, the more they would know how to be grateful. Now, it was a perfect example of this saying. Send scouts out of the city. Rather than discussing it here, why don't we send people out to scare them? Seeing is believing. Ning Wenfeng's mind was still clear enough. Faced with a chaotic situation that he couldn't understand, he still decided to send someone to take a look. Only then could he get the truest answer. "Okay, send out all the scouts." Shi Wanshan nodded in acquiescence. In his heart, he was also very curious about what Walla and the others were going to do. Wala and Yili took the allied army of 300,000 men into consideration. Jingzhou City and Shaojing City each kept 5,000 cavalrymen, and when they attacked Sambulachuan City, they lost nearly 10,000 infantrymen. They calmly left Sambulachuan City, and in a grandiose manner, headed straight for Shi City, which was 1,000 li away. As early as the moment they started to move, the scouts of the 5-star army, who were already mentally prepared, received the news and then reported it back to Beginning City. Yang Qindong, who was having lunch with 6th Madam Wan Xiaoyu, only paused for a moment after hearing Beta Persei's report. Then, he continued to eat as if nothing had happened, and a confident smile appeared on his face from time to time. Wan Xiaoyu sat opposite him and there was no trace of worry on her face. Although the number of 300,000 troops reported by Beta Persei had indeed shocked her, she was convinced that her man would still create a miracle this time when she thought of all the miracles she had seen after meeting her big brother. Through the Beginning City's Yang report, the news of the 300,000 troops under Wala and Ili Ali's joint attack quickly spread in the city. Yang Qindong adopted an extremely open policy regarding public opinion. At his request, Yang Bao even had a special current affairs column for everyone to express their personal views and opinions on current affairs. It was precisely because of this that anyone who had lived in Beginning City for more than a year seemed to be able to talk about some important matters regarding Yangxie. Over time, discussing the military situation had become a habit. It was no longer strange for them to do so. It was precisely because of this foundation that when Yang Bao of Beginning City announced this shocking news the next morning, the city was far from the panic that should have occurred. Some of the commoners originally wanted to buy more rice to store, but when they saw the piles of rice in front of the grain stores in the city, they no longer had any concerns. Only those farmers who had fields outside the city were worried and even sent some representatives to the city lord's mansion to inquire. Soon, they agreed. The Heaven Khan said that all the losses this time would be compensated by the 5-star army. After the war, they would compensate for the losses. City Lord Yu Mian also emphasized that these compensations were not provided by the Heaven Khan, but by Wala and Ili Ali. The city lord's mansion was just supporting them in advance. That's right, we're going to get Wala and Ili Belly to compensate us. The Heaven Khan is so good to us and gave us fields, houses to live in, food to eat, and hope for the future. However, some people just don't like it and always want to snatch the benefits. Since that's the case, we'll fight with them. We'll fight with them, but I don't know if we still need people to defend the city. I'm only in my 40s and I still have a lot of strength. Although I can't charge into battle without training, I can still help carry the kerosene and arrows. There's also me. I'm not even 40 years old yet. I can carry a shoulder and pull a bow. If you need me, I'll go up to the city tower and fight with these people who deserve to die. Count me in. My family has 5 brothers. Even without me, we can still live. If there's a need, we can go up to the city tower to help. Yes, it's free. We can bring our own food. In front of the city lord's mansion, after those farmers received the promise, they immediately felt that the 5-star army was cute. Returning the favor, each of them also showed their attitude. It was true that those who had money would contribute money and those who had strength would contribute strength. This kind of atmosphere quickly became the norm in the city. For a time, there were many people who requested to help defend the city. There were nearly 500,000 people in the city. Other than some children and the elderly, almost everyone else signed up. The number of people actually reached more than 300,000. When this matter was reported to City Lord Yu Mian, he excitedly told the news to Yang Qindong. The latter couldn't help but laugh out loud. Yu Mian, do you see that? This is the power of the people. Their thinking is actually very simple. Whoever is good to them, they will be good to them. In this way, we have more than 300,000 fresh troops. Isn't that much more than the enemy? What's there to be afraid of? Yes, the 6th young master is right. Yu Mian nodded excitedly. Previously, I was worried that the strength to defend the city wasn't enough. However, with the support of the people in the city, there's no need to worry. Ha ha ha. Yang Qindong finally saw the power of the people. At that time, with these people doing the logistics work, in addition to the new army's main force, the reserve officers and soldiers in the logistics division, as well as the captives and soldiers, he already had enough confidence to fight with any force. One had to know that not long ago, they had just taken in nearly 60,000 Baiming deserters. Just this force alone was already considered very large. Since Wallace's goal was already very clear, there was no intention of hiding some of their actions in the beginning city. The outer and inner city gates were closed one after another, showing a posture of strict defense. The performance of the beginning city fell into the eyes of Wallace's scouts outside the city. They quickly reported the news. After Yeshen and Apuli, who were hurrying on their way, learned about it, their faces were relaxed and at ease. Although the beginning city's actions were so fast that it was somewhat out of their expectations, they did not know if the Heavenly Khan was conceited or if they had no way out and insisted on smashing an egg against a rock because they wanted to stop their army of 300,000 with less than 40,000 soldiers. Yeshen rode on his horse and looked at Apuli, who was beside him, and asked, "Lord Prime Minister, how should the current situation be described in the language of the Han people?" Apuli pondered for a moment before giving the answer. It should be called not knowing the time and things, or it can also be called a mantis trying to stop a chariot. Ha, well said. Lord Prime Minister is indeed knowledgeable. By the way, there won't be any problems with the Baiming army, right? You have to know that our escape route is in their hands. There mustn't be any problems. Yeshen laughed and said worriedly. Since the Emperor of Baiming has already agreed, he will definitely not go back on his word. What's more, in his eyes, we and the 5-star army are his enemies. He will definitely not intervene in such a good show. When it came to this issue, Apuli was very confident. That's good. Next, we will send troops to the beginning city. I heard that there are mountains of gold and silver, piles of food, and groups of slaves there. Ha, I didn't expect the Heavenly Khan to be a good person for once and prepares so many good things for us. Without any worries, Yeshen's face was carefree and at the same time, his face was full of expectations. Sanbu's Tile River City. The dispatched scouts reported back one by one. After confirming the fact that the beginning city's gate was closed and the alliance of Walla and Ili Ali was advancing step by step, they quickly reported back to the city. General Shi Wanshan immediately invited the two vice-generals Ancient River and Ning Wenfeng to prepare for the attack. They actually dare to jump over us to attack the beginning city. This is simply not putting us in their eyes. Since that's the case, this time we will show them our power. General Ancient River, I will give you 30,000 troops. Once the attack and defense of the beginning city begins, you will immediately lead the troops to attack Shaojing City and Wenfeng City. I will also give you 30,000 troops to attack Jingzhou City. We will cut off their escape route first. Shi Wanshan's face was filled with anger. Chapter 978. He did not know where the other party got the guts to abandon him and attack the beginning city behind him. However, since there was such an opportunity, he would of course attack quickly in order to obtain more victories and greater victories. Ancient River and Ning Wenfeng, who were called out, cupped their fists and responded. Then, they prepared to mobilize the troops to attack the city. However, before they could walk out of the government office, they saw a group of more than 100 embroidered uniform guards surrounding the place. Then, the military supervisor eunuch, Deng Cheng, appeared. What are you doing? Seeing that the government office was surrounded and the embroidered uniform guards appeared, Shi Wanshan's expression changed slightly. He looked at Deng Cheng who was walking toward him and asked sternly. Ancient River and Ning Wenfeng, who were about to leave after receiving the military order, looked at Deng Cheng in confusion. At the same time, their right hands slowly moved toward their waists. It was obvious that they were prepared to make a move at any time. Don't misunderstand. Deng Chang's expression did not change and his heart did not skip a beat. It was as if he did not see the reaction of the two deputy commanders. He faced Shi Wanshan and said, "Commander Shi, I just received a secret order from Supervisor Jin. The Xian Mansion soldiers are not allowed to leave Sanbula City. Please do not make things difficult for them." After saying this, Deng Chang waved his hand to the embroidered uniform guards on his left and right and said, "Guards, guard every path leading out of the government office." Without orders, the three commanders are not allowed to leave the government office. Otherwise, kill them without mercy. After the embroidered uniform guards in flying fish robes responded, they quickly occupied every path and completely controlled Shi Wanshan and the other two in the small courtyard. After everything was done, Deng Chang waved his hand again. Immediately, a few eunuchs brought out the good wine and dishes that had been prepared in advance and brought them to the table. Deng Chang was the first to find a seat and sit down. Sigh, speaking of which, I rarely have the chance to have a good drink with the three generals. Come, take a seat. With a face full of doubt, Ancient River signaled Shi Wanshan with his eyes several times. What should he do? Although it was true that there were embroidered uniform guards in the vicinity, this was not the imperial city. In this city, there were close to 200,000 Baiming army. They could be deployed at any time. Just relying on these embroidered uniform guards was not enough to scare them. Ancient River only needed to shout, and some of the nearby soldiers, and patrolling soldiers would rush over to help him control the situation. Shi Wanshan naturally understood Ancient River's intentions, but he did not agree to do so. It was clear that Deng Chang's actions today were not his own. It was the head eunuch Jin Ying's idea. It was very likely the emperor's idea. If he charged out now, it would be no different from a rebellion. In ancient times, rebellion was a great crime. It was punishable by death. How could Shi Wanshan take such a risk? He had never thought about it, nor had he prepared for it. He signaled to Ning Wenfeng with his eyes to keep an eye on Ancient River's deputy head eunuch. He then sat down across from Deng Chang and sternly asked, "Eunuch Deng, what is the meaning of this?" Right now, Walla and Commander Ili's army is marching toward the first city. A major battle is unavoidable. This is the time for us to strike. Soon, Shaojing and Jingzhou will belong to the Baiming. Che. Deng Chang sighed. He had been in the city all this time, so how could he not understand this principle? 2 hours ago, he had also been thinking this. After all, the Xian Mansion guards had performed a great service, and as an army eunuch, he had received many benefits. But who would have thought that just a moment ago, a eunuch from the imperial palace of the capital had come to see him, even taking out a letter personally written by Jining. The letter explained in detail that the Xuanfu soldiers could not take advantage of the situation to make trouble for Walla and Ili, or else they would be ruining the plans of the imperial court. She also ordered that if Shi Wanshan and the other two did not listen to her advice, they could be arrested on the spot and escorted back to the capital. Regardless of whether Deng Chang accepted the order or not, he had to carry it out. That was the reason for the current situation, and also the reason for his current sigh. Head eunuch Shi, we are just serving the imperial court. This is an order from above. All we have to do is to obey. Don't you think so? Deng Chang did not explain anything. He did not know what to explain, so he could only use orders to suppress people. What is it? You clearly have a good opportunity to attack, but you don't do anything. The straightforward and fiery deputy head eunuch Ancient River also walked over. Before he arrived, his questioning voice had already been heard. Deng Chang was not angry when he heard this. He just shook his head and said, I don't know whether it is an opportunity to attack or not. But since it is an order from above, we have to obey. Deputy head eunuch Gu, do you want to disobey the order? Ancient River still wanted to argue. Shi Wanshan spoke up, that's enough. General Ancient River, restrain your temper. Don't be impatient. Yes. Even if we want to send troops, We can't do it in such a hurry. Since we have already brought good wine and good dishes, how can we waste them and not eat them? Another deputy head eunuch Ning Wenfeng chuckled and sat down at the table. He even picked up his chopsticks and looked like he was going to eat a big piece. The smart Ning Wenfeng had already realized that the order from above did not allow them to send troops. Rather than stubbornly resisting and provoking anger, it was better to sit down and have a good chat to see if they could find out what went wrong. Shi Wanshan quickly understood Ning Wenfeng's intentions and suppressed the anger in his heart. Only Ancient River was left. Seeing that he wouldn't be of much use even if he stood, he simply sat down and took a big bowl of wine to relieve the depression in his heart. Shi Wanshan and Ning Wenfeng raised their wine cups to toast Deng Chang. Eunuch Deng Chang, who knew their intentions, smiled bitterly. Generals, don't ask me what is going on. To be honest, I don't know either. But I think you guys should be able to guess it. Whatever you guessed, that's what it is. I only know that the reinforcements sent by the Emperor, Governor Shi Heng, are currently leading troops in the Jiong Pass area and are not moving forward. When Deng Chang said this, Shi Wanshan and Ning Wenfeng had nothing to say. Although it was only a piece of information, it already told them too much. The reinforcements were not in a hurry to come. Instead, they were not moving forward. This was the attitude of the imperial court. In other words, they didn't have the intention to start a war with Walla and Ili. Instead, they wanted to sit on the mountain and watch the tigers fight. How long had it been since the Walla coalition army left and the imperial court had already sent the news? It could be seen that this was not something unexpected. It had been prepared for a long time. In other words, the Walla coalition army bypassed them and directly contacted the higher-ups. They even contacted the emperor and got the result they wanted. Otherwise, they wouldn't be so assured to leave their way out and rush straight to the first city. When they thought of this result, the four of them didn't look good. This drinking session wasn't very enjoyable. After a while, Deng Chang left first. When he left a sentence, "Please stay in this magistrate court. If you need anything, even if it's a woman, you can tell the brothers of the embroidered uniform guards. They will fulfill all your wishes." This was equivalent to house arrest. Deng Chang left, and the group of embroidered uniform guards also disappeared from their sight. But it could be imagined that once they made a move, they would immediately appear from the darkness. The three dignified commanders who held heavy military forces were actually placed under house arrest when the war was about to start. This unhappiness made Ancient River the first to get angry. He threw the wine jar on the ground, opened his eyes and shouted, "What's going on? What is the meaning of this? Are you repaying kindness with ingratitude? Brother Gu, be careful with your words." Shi Wanshan's face changed after hearing this. Ning Wenfeng, who was at the side, was even more direct. He slashed out with his palm and hit the back of Gu He's neck, knocking him unconscious. This was also something that couldn't be helped. They were surrounded by embroidered uniform guards. If some words were spread out, not only Ancient River, but they would also be guilty. Ancient River was knocked out, and it was as if the world had returned to peace. Only the whispers between Shi Wanshan and Ning Wenfeng were left. "Commander, are we just going to watch the war start and do nothing? He had just helped us before. So what? Can we still disobey the orders from above? Everything we have is given by the emperor and the court. The emperor's orders cannot be disobeyed." But why? Is it because the higher-ups think they are clever? Don't they know that once the Walla army wins, they will immediately point their spears at us? At that time, we won't have any allies. If we encounter any difficulties, who will help us? On the other hand, if the Duke of Loyalty wins, he will not let us off easily. It is not impossible for him to start a war with the Baiming army. Comparing our military strength, what are our chances of winning? Ha! Shi Wanshan's cold laughter was heard. The higher-ups? When have the higher-ups done anything right? They clearly said that they would give us 100,000 taels of silver as a reward, but they only got 10,000 taels of silver. Because of this, they almost caused a mutiny in the army. If they were smart, why would they do something like digging their own foundation? Counting on them. Ha! At this point, the air seemed to have frozen. The commander and deputy commander both stopped talking. They suddenly felt a sense of helplessness. If one did not seek death, one would not die. The great Ming dynasty was originally prosperous, but because of the internal strife, the eunuchs monopolizing power, a dynasty was finally destroyed. However, at this moment, no matter how helpless or resentful the two commanders felt, all they could do was complain. Unless they wanted to rebel, they could only listen to the orders of the higher-ups. They did not even have the right to leave this government office. After a few days of traveling, the vanguard of the Walla and Ili army arrived at the foot of Saihan Mountain. When the scouts went up the mountain to investigate, they found that the place had long been empty. According to the scouts, the people on the mountain had been gone for a few days, not just 1 or 2 days. Chapter 979. The news quickly spread to the Middle Army, and Apu's expression became slightly gloomy after hearing it. The 5-star army gave up on defending Saihan Mountain for no reason. This could only mean one thing, that is, they had already guessed that they would attack the beginning city. In this case, the beginning city, which had been prepared for a long time, would not be as easy to attack as they thought. The army was about to set out, and they would not stop just because the other party was prepared. The army continued to move forward, relying on the absolute advantage in strength. This time, Yeshen and Apu were determined to take down the beginning city. At the very least, they wanted to drive Yang Qindong out of the grassland. If possible, it would be best to kill him here. The army of 300,000 came in a mighty manner. Along the way, the green grassland became dry, revealing yellow or black ground. After all, there were too many warhorses, and the amount of food consumed every day was an astronomical figure. After another 3 days of rushing, the army finally arrived at the so-called first city of the grassland. From a distance, the beginning city was like a heavenly pass standing on the grassland. It was like a heavenly beast that landed here, showing its domineering and mighty power. Is this the beginning city? It's really majestic. Riding on his warhorse, he came to the grassland that was 5 miles away from the beginning city. Looking up at the high city in the distance, he first expressed his true feelings. Prime Minister Apu, who also saw the beginning city for the first time, also showed a look of admiration. He sighed sincerely. The Duke of Loyalty and Courage of the Great Ming Dynasty is really an outstanding person. Just from the scale of this city, you can see that he has put in a lot of effort. This financial resources and this courage are not what ordinary people can achieve. Hee, but it will soon belong to us, won't it? After sighing, Yeshen's eyes showed a greedy look. Yes, it will soon belong to us. Apu was also inexplicably excited. The development of Ili in the past few years was not very satisfactory, and it was all thanks to the role played by him as the Prime Minister. If they could take down the first city and plunder a large amount of resources from there, it would definitely be a great stimulus to the domestic economy. Perhaps it would even lead to a great development. Yeshen was thinking about becoming the lord of the origin city. In this way, even if he lost a fight in the future, he wouldn't have to be like a stray dog with nowhere to go. At that time, he would have the strength to attack and defend. At that time, it was not impossible for his strength to double or even more. The two people in power gave the order for the army to set up camp with expectant expressions. In order to make the harvest this time even more abundant, they gave the order to surround the city on all sides. They were not allowed to let anyone or anything in the beginning city go. In the process of the army surrounding the city, more than 300,000 mu of grain fields appeared in front of them. For this matter, Yeshen and Alip even personally came to the scene. When they saw so much food about to grow, they couldn't help but feel excited. With this, their army's food problem could be considered solved. Therefore, the two of them gave the same order at the same time. They ordered that no one was allowed to destroy the grain fields that were still growing. In the end, the beginning city was surrounded. Looking down from the top of the city gate tower, there was a continuous stretch of barracks next to each other, and the densely packed silhouettes were like endless ants. Under Yang Qindong's intention, he deliberately opened the 4 inner city gates to allow ordinary people to go to the outer city to watch the enemy. This completely abnormal action immediately attracted countless people to go up the city tower to watch. Then, many people saw too many enemies coming down the city tower. Their legs were still trembling. They were really frightened. After all, the 300,000 soldiers mentioned and the 300,000 soldiers in front of their eyes were two completely different concepts. For this matter, the city lord, Yu Mian, raised doubts. According to him, the people couldn't know too much. Otherwise, they would really be frightened and there might even be internal strife. Regarding this, Yang Qindong only said a few words. After enjoying peace for a long time, one will forget about war. Now, let them feel the atmosphere before the war. It will only make them cherish peace and life even more, as well as the hard-won happy life now. In order to ensure that this kind of life can last, everyone must contribute their strength. The reason why Yang Qindong made this decision was based on his own reasons. In this battle, he didn't plan to use too much of the regular army. If possible, he wouldn't use a single regular army. The reserves were enough. Just like when he faced the 30,000 elite cavalry, Yang Qindong adopted a training method. In the end, he created the world's #1 cavalry division, which strengthened and increased the strength of the 5-star army's cavalry. This time, he was still preparing to train the troops. Only real battles could produce elite troops. If they relied only on drills, it would be better if they encountered a favorable battle. However, once the situation became critical, it was hard to say what kind of decision they would make. Previously, Yang Qindong had decided to build another army after the new First Army. It would be called the new Second Army. However, he only gave a rough idea of how the new Second Army would be formed. Until now, when the city was besieged, he gave his final opinion and decision. The reserve soldiers would be qualified to become the new Second Army's soldiers if they didn't die after guarding the city tower for 3 days. Soldiers could only become more mature after experiencing bloody battles and life and death situations. Perhaps there were some who were very brave, some who were both intelligent and courageous, and some who simply focused on evading and attacking. However, no matter what the result was, as long as they could stay on the city tower for 3 days without being harmed, it was enough to prove that they were capable and could be called a veteran. The facts had already proven that Yang Qindong wanted to build an elite army. He wanted to walk the path of elite soldiers. Moreover, he valued the lives of the soldiers very much. As long as there was a slight possibility, he would think of a way to ensure the safety of the soldiers. Under such principles, the new Second Army naturally couldn't be made up of only new soldiers. Otherwise, if they encountered a tough battle and suffered heavy losses, it wouldn't be what he wanted. The task of building the new Second Army was given, and the procedures for selecting the soldiers were also given. In order to ensure that there wouldn't be any accidents while training the soldiers, the 8,000 soldiers of the new First Army's recruit division also ascended the city tower. In principle, they didn't need to make a move unless there was an emergency. Training soldiers was fine, but if they lost the city and suffered a great defeat because of training soldiers, that wouldn't be what Yang Qindong wanted. Give them a sufficient number of bows and weapons. Tell them that if they want to become the glorious 5-star army soldiers, it's time to show off. After knowing that the 4 cities were surrounded and that not even a drop of water could trickle through, Yang Qindong unhurriedly gave a military order to the future commander of the new Second Army, Shi Bi. This young man who was half Han and half Mongolian had been put in an important position since he met Yang Qindong. He finally had the opportunity to shoulder the burden alone. For this important position, all Shi Bi had to do was to work hard and do his best. Yang Qindong was undoubtedly very relieved to leave this matter to Shi Bi. Therefore, when the war was about to arrive, while everyone else was nervously busy, he accompanied Luan Xiaoyu in the Yang residence and taught her how to sing a new song and compose a new program. As a result, other than a group of generals coming in and out of the Yang residence every day, there was also a group of female soldiers from the publicity department who joined in the fun. Regarding this, it gave everyone the feeling that their sixth young master was too ambitious. However, it was this great ambition that gave everyone unparalleled confidence. Yang Qindong's indifference and confidence encouraged everyone. Gradually, more and more officers didn't take the war seriously. It took them 2 full days to surround the first city. Next, it was time for the army to set up camp. It took another 2 days for the 300,000 soldiers to prepare the siege weapons. When they arrived at the first city, they realized that the ladders that they had prepared before were still too short. The length was far from enough. The third city's Wuchuan city was only 50 to 60 feet high. The first city's tower was 150 feet high. The corresponding length of the ladder also had to be increased. This matter was difficult for the Walla coalition army. They had to send more soldiers to search for useful materials in the forest. At that time, without the help of firearms, the offensive was generally the same old 3 methods: shield carts, catapults, and ladders. Needless to say, ladders were used to climb up the city. The structure was simple. The catapult was a long-range offensive weapon. Its main purpose was to deter and suppress the enemy's arrows. Unfortunately, the stones in the grassland were not easy to find. Especially when the first city was being built, the nearby stones were dug up early. At this moment, the catapult became a gunpowder vehicle. Because the amount of gunpowder in the Walla coalition army was limited and the accuracy of the attack was not good, the power of the catapult was also greatly reduced. Finally, the shield carts. This was a wooden cart wrapped in a layer of cowhide to ensure that arrows couldn't easily penetrate it. In addition, the cowhide was soaked in water to ensure that it was impervious to fire and water. It was the best auxiliary method to get close to the city. At the same time, it was also one of the important weapons of the Walla coalition army when attacking the city. Among the 300,000 coalition army, most of the Walla coalition army were cavalry. There were also 50,000 infantrymen. This was also the main force of the siege. As long as they could attack the city tower and then rush down to open the city gate from the inside, the cavalry warriors could take the opportunity to kill their way into the city. At that time, they would still have the advantage of numbers. The first city would change hands and all the resources inside would be snatched away. Thank you, Prime Minister. Tomorrow was the day of the first attack. Yes Han looked at Alip with a pleading expression. Well said, well said. Alip nodded. Choosing the first city as the target was originally his first suggestion. Now that he had the infantrymen to attack the city, the first battle would naturally start with him. That night, Alip called the infantryman General Korban and gave him the order to attack the city tomorrow. Remember, on the first day of the siege, you still have to test the waters. First, you have to find out the strength of the enemy. The outside world has always said that the 5-star army's combat power is extraordinary. You have to be careful. In fact, there is nothing to be afraid of. The advantage of the cavalry is to charge and kill, not to defend the city. So just do it. You're tuning in to the Blissful Bookshelf YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.